I'm switching hats for you, Neesman. There.
No, keep it on.
Do you hate the military?
Keep it on. You can switch it later, but I will bring it up. I will congratulate your.
We are live. Just so you guys are aware, we are streaming live. So.
Oh, we are streaming live.
She is not enjoying this.
You just insulted the city of Washington live. Look at that. We got rid of Chris like that. That was easy. Who's coming? This is a puppy dog.
Hello. Comics.
They don't. It's like thunderstorm.
These unruly fucking crew we got here.
He doesn't like it.
Here, I have a
Comics. To Around Comics.
From Chicago, this is Around Comics, the comic culture podcast, where we talk about everything in and around the world of comics and comics culture. I'm your host, Mr. Christopher Neesman, and I'm joined by, as always, I really tripped over that one, Sal. I'm joined by Sal. Sal, hi, how are you doing?
I'm good. How's everything?
I'm very nervous because we have the most powerful man in comics with us.
Yeah,
tonight.
right? Like this guy is he is superstar of superstar writer of comics now.
We told him in the pre-show. It was the only thing that for him to ascend to all-star status was us to shut down the podcast because we missed his meteoric rise.
This is true. We got to know him before he was anybody. He was just some schlub novel writer and, hawking some book at a comic book
C.I.A.
convention.
guy.
Yeah.
Guys, I seriously, psychologically, am having some problems with this entire podcast. Hearing your voices in my head is it's like the fucking helicopter in Apocalypse Now. I'm flashing back.
Did the From Chicago get you?
Yes, yeah, the From Chicago, the in and around come. Oh my, am I supposed to start? I gotta give context. So I started listening to podcasts in 2000.
We should say who you throw one out there.
Yeah,
we never did introduce
I'm telling you, it's freaking me out. So I'm trying to.
This is multiple Eisner Award winner, amazing all-star writer, Mr. Tom King. Hi.
Who the fuck is this guy?
No,
Oh, Jesus. There's more of
You sound just like my wife.
A lot of people wrote Batman. Impress me.
CIA.
I wrote Elmer Fudd. Okay. Yeah, I work for the CIA. There it goes.
Yeah, it's my wife.
He probably killed
Marta.
people for the CIA.
I think your husband is very cool.
She doesn't care about you. She has a crush on Sal. That's the only reason she's here.
It's true.
I get it. He's a handsome man. I understand.
My wife
That makes
doesn't
sense.
think so, but
Him and I have an agreement. It's all good.
Oh, this is a very hot podcast. I'm into it.
Yeah. Well, what's your favorite podcast?
I was just downstairs telling my children my favorite podcast of all time is Around Comics.
woo!
All time Hall of Fame.
Okay, we can end the
#1.
show now. That's it. We're good.
Yep. Thanks for dropping by, Tom.
Right.
It's good
No,
talking with you.
That's it. That's based on your product from 2006 to 2009. So I
Shit.
don't know. You guys might have totally fallen off by this.
Done nothing but gone downhill.
Yeah, it's
Dude,
over.
guys, when Scotty Young came on your podcast, I used to cuss at my fucking radio. Am I allowed to cuss now? I hated Scotty. I hated him.
So did we.
He's a friend of mine now. God knows he's a gloriously talented artist. But I fucking hated him on your show because I was like, I just want to listen to the originals. This guy thinks he's too cool just because he draws comics. Fuck this Scotty Young.
There was a divide. There was a forced divide there.
It was. You were not the only person who felt that way about Scotty, but it was another
out of the three of us.
Yes, I was going to go there, but that's true.
Heard love him.
No, yeah, it was. We've had a lot of, as we've been as we've been told by guys like the iFanboy crew, we are more famous for our format changes than for anything we've done really in comic, in podcasting. We just
so every time. So here's the secret behind that. Every time there was a format change, that was me trying to keep him interested in the.
Okay,
now all the behind the scenes stuff. My mind is blowing up. Oh my god!
Well, that's the terrible thing. Like, we never got a chance to hang out with you, during that time and like drink and do stupid things.
I slept on a floor next to this man.
We did, and I was intimidated. I was too intimidated to talk to you.
That's
literally, I could not.
Fucking hilarious.
I know, it was like if it had been Chris on one side and Brad Pitt on the other. Again, I would have been more intimidated than Brad Pitt, because you guys were my pinnacle. You were my
wow.
When I was in Afghanistan, Pakistan border area, like very much like this, quarantined. I could only leave the house to go on raids and shit, and
to go on raids and shit. Yeah.
So you had to eat the time, and this is before. And so, like, for the first time, I went on and I was like, because iTunes would do the podcast. I was too lazy in 2005. Sure. But when they got added to iTunes, and I was like, I Googled and I just typed in comics in the podcast, and iFanboy and CGS were the ones that popped up.
Sure,
and
Word Balloon probably.
And Word Balloon and Augie the Bleaks, like whatever that was.
Oh God, Augie. That's crazy.
You guys are the godfathers, the podfathers of comics. But I liked yours the best. Yours I thought was the most professional, and you had the same format every time. I know it's ironic because you just said no, but
well, it was a consistent format until we changed it. So.
Yeah.
And then it was
consistent. You guys were funny. Tom literally is one of the. I know maybe you guys hate him because he's up there, but he was like one of the first geniuses I've like. I was like, oh my God, this guy's. And I would listen to you guys. You would do summaries. I remember specific episodes. And I was like 30. I went back and listened to you from the beginning when you're still fumbling and figuring it out and then adding people. Yeah. And I listened to you guys. You were my like ultimate stress reliever when I was overseas.
So you were listening to us when you were.
That means a lot.
You were in Afghanistan. You were listening to Around Comics.
Yeah, I discovered you and listened. Yeah, you were my safety place. I owe you a debt of a life debt. Wow. If you ever like, Tom, I need a kidney, I'd be like, all right, fuck, I have a kidney. I swear to God. It's very emotional for me in a way.
Probably one of the proudest things that I can look back on with the show is you're the only multiple Eisner Award winner that says they were, overseas and enjoyed the show. But we did get several that were in the military. Brian Bruce, I still am friends with on Facebook. He was on an aircraft carrier, and then he actually ended up in Iraq on the ground, and he would send us messages and pictures from the aircraft carrier of having like our Around Comics fly, up in one of the parts of the, and that probably affected me more than any fan or creator that ever contacted us. Is whenever I found out that there were a lot of servicemen and women that listened to the show and would look forward to, because it was that time away that they could get from the crap that they were dealing with.
I'm just sad that we never got to do like a USO show. Like a Bob Hope style.
Well, you did.
Get the girls out there dancing and go out live and just sort of entertain the troops. Now that would have been something.
You went on a USO tour.
I did.
I went on a USO tour. I went to Kuwait and did a USO tour.
Did you really?
Yes, as the least famous person on the tour. It was
you were writing Batman.
Yeah, no. Every once in a while, I'd find a soldier who knew who I was, but it was me, Jim Lee, and 3 actresses from the WB who were amazing. But yeah, it was like, who are you? No, I want to see the beautiful young actresses move off the stage. I was not the star of this show, but it was incredible. It was one of the great experiences of my life. It was honestly it was also weird, because I'd been in Iraq 15 years before that to go back.
Was there a moment of, you're sending me back there?
Yeah, there was a moment of like you'd go there and the old guys would be like, Oh man, I remember my first tour in 2010. I was like, I was here in 2004. How old am I? It really made me feel like I was like, man, this is a generation, like these kids, like you're seeing kids who were, 6 years old when I was over here who are now here now. You're like, it's just a little fucked up in that way. But yeah.
How do you think we feel with the comic book podcast? It's like we started in 06? Was
wow,
it
way to compare those two things.
But in a weird way to bring it back to comics.
I know.
We were taught when we first started the show, we were talking to a lot of, up and coming creators that were doing their first work at like Oni or Image or, those kind of, we were talking to guys like Matt Fraction and Jason Aaron.
My puppy has come to join them.
Oh, there you go. So that was, so it's interesting how we kind of like watched that sea change of comics where it was kind of going from the Warren Ellis and Mark Miller and those guys were, total stars at that point. And then it was the Fractions and Aarons and Brubakers and those guys and, Gail Simone coming up. And then by the time that we're leaving the show the first time, it's like those guys were the established names. And there was like this Tom King guy that I remember meeting who had written this he was pushing at comic conventions.
Well, for me, it was, as a kid, not everybody's like this. This is why I like hid my comic book nerd when I was at school. I bought comics on the weekend, but I didn't have any friends. If they were into comics, maybe they read like one X-Men a month, or they read the G.I. Joe comic or something like that. But no one was like me, who was, I was buying 10 to 20 a week. I was buying back issues. I was taking my scooter 2 miles through LA to get to my scooter. God, I was a nerd. To the comic books. And I just remembered, like, when I was a kid, it's not like now, I don't know if people understand, but you could not tell someone you were into comic books. That was like something to be ashamed of. It was almost, especially like once you were past the age of 12. It was like, at least you could be beat up for that. It was uncool to be into comics.
Well, you were SoCal, Kate.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm from West Los Angeles. Yeah.
Okay, but now obviously because of the hat, which congratulations. I wish we had given you better, like scored like 3 runs would have been nice.
Not only did we win the World Series, we won the last World Series. That means we're forever champions.
Oh boy, that's it.
2 years reigning. Could be. But how'd you end up East Coast? Because you went to what, Columbia?
Yeah, I went to. So I grew up in LA. Super comic book fan. I gave up. I like a lot. I'm a '90s kid. Or I guess 80s, 90s kid. And like everybody from my generation, I gave up comics like in 94, 5.
Yeah.
Like right after
you're like us. You didn't know that there was still actually fucking Sal's a cockroach. You'll never kill him. He never stopped buying comics. You never did. You've always bought comics. I held out. I didn't know that there was really good stuff coming out in the 90s. It was just the Marvel and DC kind of the mainline titles really, really sucked. I didn't find out the cool stuff in the 90s till mid 2000s.
For me, it was that plus it was an economic thing where like my parents had, or my mother, a single mother, no, she would never spend a dime on comic books. It had to be my money. So like when I got a car, when I, had to take a girl out on a date, like I just didn't have that $10 a week to spend on comics anymore.
Sure.
And so I dropped it until I hit college. But even though but it was still influencing because I do remember deciding what college to go to and reading Frank Miller's, what is that stuff? Whatever, The Man Without Fear, and seeing that Daredevil went to Columbia and be like, maybe that's the place to go.
That's hilarious.
I was like, if Matt Murdock went to Columbia,
maybe I could be a lawyer. That's yeah.
Was there ever a book that you stuck with all the time? I know Sal, it's you've always bought Daredevil, right? I mean,
yeah, Daredevil was like the first book that I ever started to collect. And I've up until recently, I stopped buying the single issues after Bendis's run, pretty much. That was kind of when I stopped.
You mean stay for Brubaker?
Oh no, I do have. Yeah, I do. I did stay for Brubaker. Well, I'm in a Brubaker issue actually, but yeah. So I did stay for Brubaker. I don't remember. I'd have to go and look at my box because I still have it. But
the reason he's in there, we'll tell you off camera because it's a hilarious story.
Yeah,
I cannot wait.
That was at Wizard World, right?
That is when Around Comics was born.
Yeah. That was we'll tell you that story. But yeah, I've always collected.
Were you guys one of the mics in Civil War? Or was that was CGS? And I remember.
Oh yeah. It's what? Wait, what? No.
I don't remember. We might have been.
We've been on some. Yeah, so the mic. Whatchamacallits,
the press microphone
flags.
Yeah,
I think we've been on some mic flags. I think Mike Norton put us on some mic flags.
The double mic.
I was when Matt Murdock went to prison in Brubaker's run. I was a guard.
You got shivved or something, didn't you?
No, I don't know. I think he did come back.
I think you got shivved.
I don't know. This brings up an interesting question. I want to know the answer to, Tom, is when are the Gotham Knights going to finally trade that fucking bum, Chris Campbell? When are they going to get rid of that guy? Because I'm sick of watching him lose. And I just, every time I see that, I chuckle. Every time I see Chris Campbell mentioned as the terrible quarterback of the Gotham Knights. Although there was a moment where he was successful, but most of his appearances, he's been awful as a quarterback, and like fans just yell at him. And
he's also a horrible person.
Well, that's
also a horrible person. Yeah. He even appears in the Swamp Thing issue that I'm on the ice there for. Yeah, he's the kid. I remember the first time I was writing that, I didn't know what to write. I was writing about a quarterback and he sucked. I was like, oh, because Campbell. But so for people who don't know, Chris Campbell's a buddy of ours, who legally speaking is not the basis of that character, obviously. But coincidentally,
he's a lawyer because he will sue you.
But he played football in college. And will brag to you about his football, but he went to the smallest college in the world, where you.
I don't see it because
he was the biggest guy at the college.
This is how I would describe Chris Campbell. He is Frank Quietly's Clark Kent.
Yes,
from All Star Superman.
100%. He has this huge chin, and
he's just kind of hunched over and kind of bumbling, but you can absolutely see him going into a telephone booth and all of a sudden he's a superhero. 100%. I mean, that just kind of, if I didn't know he was from out east, are you from Kansas? He's that nice.
He's one of the people I met through. I met him through you guys indirectly because I met him through the iFanboy party where I met you guys. That iFanboy party changed my life. 2013, I think. We got really drunk there.
Those whores were throwing so many parties. Which one was that?
I think it was 2000. It was New York Comic Con 2013.
Oh, that was a good one. Yeah.
You and I and two other people ended up drunk outside, swapping stories about restaurants or some shit.
Is that the one where we bumped into Mike Myers?
Mike Myers, that sounds familiar. It was the one where Jason Aaron showed up at the end with Joe Quesada, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, everybody's here!"
Yes, that one.
Yeah. And
we were in Brooklyn.
Yes,
we were in Brooklyn. We went to, what was the name of that comic shop in Brooklyn? I can't remember. Crap. I imagine they're still there. Great shop, but that's kind of where it started and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah. Nobody throws a party like Ron.
Well, at least he does something good.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. You guys throwing the iFanboys. When you guys crapped out, I went all iFanboy, and they became my favorite podcast. Just
we love those guys, and they do. We have always had a long-standing faux, adversarial relationship with those guys. But I don't think there's I don't really have much respect for comic book podcasters in general.
Your own people?
Yeah, no, I'm a self-hating podcaster.
You're a self-hating podcaster.
Yeah. But those guys, we've always liked those guys, and it's fun that they get it, and we can always kind of give them shit and they give us shit, and there's no hard feelings.
Yeah, it's brothers from others. I will text with Ron all the time, and I still keep in touch with Josh. Connor, I every once in a while, but those guys are. I love them. Love all of them. So Suntress is an asshole.
I know everybody hates Suntress. He's one of my best friends, and I love him to death. So go fuck you. He's awesome.
No, John's John's great. As far as Chicago area.
You're responsible for my friendship with John, because the first time I heard him was on your podcast, and I followed him to his podcast because he used to guest.
We'll talk about an unwanted guest. I mean, if you want to talk about guys that we didn't want on the show and we couldn't get rid of, John was. We never were on his show. Not once did we ever end up on John Suntress's show, but goddamn, he was on ours. Every weekend there was John.
Well, that was our fault for having it in a public place.
This is true.
Hey, you guys were getting some like Hillary Barda would show up, and
Hill was.
That was one of the most interesting.
I hate that this is the walk down around comics memory lane.
But this is what I love.
With you about. But that era of it was so awesome. There was probably about a 2-year period where we're doing it at Dark Comics. It would be Suntress, Mike Norton, Hillary Barda, Steve Seeley, Mike would cruise in every once in a while. Gene Ha would pop in on Jeff Brown. It
became a scene. It really did.
Would come in. I mean, and the thing is, there were probably 50 or 60 episodes where there were huge comic book names in the show or in the shop that we'd be like, hey, do you want to jump in? They're like, no, man, I just want to hang out here and have a beer and listen to you guys. So there was like this whole audience of people hanging out in the shop. And then at some point they would stop fucking caring what we were talking about. And they'd be off in corners talking about this or that. And so it was like this every Friday it turned into a get together Friday for the North Side comic book community would show up there, and we'd do our show and go out after the show and have drinks and a bite to eat. It was a really, really neat time. I don't want to say time of my life, but I will always, always, always look back on as being a really special time. And you kind of had to be there. You know, it was nuts.
It was in a small way, like, you know, when you go back and you read about music scenes or like some kind of happening, you don't realize it like when it was going on, but there definitely was that on a small scale. There was that sort of like it became a scene. Like every Friday night, people would just show up, and mostly it was professional and for us it was this bizarre thing because we weren't in the comic. We loved comics. We weren't in the industry. We had not contributed anything to the business of comics, and yet here we were. I had said a long time ago, it was like Chris and I and Tom went to a baseball game, and then we got to hang out with all the players afterwards. That's what it felt like for us, because, you know, we were like, holy shit, this is really crazy that anyone gives a shit what we're saying. And two, like, these people all are doing the things that we love, and they seem to actually, you know, have some interest in what we're doing here. So yeah, it was always really, you know, it's still weird, a guy like you coming on here where we should be talking about all the amazing things that you've accomplished.
Absolutely not. No.
You want to talk about our stupid podcast that we kind 100%. Of have done.
100%.
All right. So
wait. Let me say, when I first got on Grayson, so when I first broke into comics, my first break-in was an editor pitched me for Grayson #1.
Okay.
And he came back and said, Tom, I can't offer you the gig. And I had to come with a pitch over a weekend. It was at C2E2. And I threw it in. He's like, I liked your pitch. I want to accept it. I need to use your first comic, so I need to give you a gig. But do you mind working with another established writer? He's like, I want you to work with Tim Seeley. And I was like, you mean from Around Comics? And my editor's like, what? I was like, if he's been on Around Comics, he's okay with me. Let's go.
That's wow. All right. Well,
that is 100% true. That's word for word what I said.
That's amazing. We had Tim on last week, and I'm going to email him and tell him you said that.
Tim's another great friend of mine, and is responsible for my career, so blame him. But yes, that is 100.
He said he hated every second of working with you on Grayson.
I can feel that. Yeah, no, I felt that.
No, he was very complimentary of it. It was interesting to hear about the process that you guys kind of developed doing that, and it actually worked. I mean, it's kind of like a blind date, and you guys, it actually worked.
But I knew him a little bit because I listened to him on your podcast. That's why it worked.
So we are the reason that Grayson works so well.
I cannot emphasize this. I'm going to say it 1,000. I would not be in comics today if it wasn't for you guys.
Oh my god!
You guys set my taste in the beginning. If like I was reading, I was like, oh man, this Greg Rucka sounds like the genius of ever, the best writer of all time. I'm going to get everything he wrote. And so, you guys, like you said, there was a new guy. Like the first time I heard Jason Aaron, he was on your podcast. First time I heard
that's my Queen and Country wall over there.
I remember you were interviewing Rucka, and you were a little fanboying out, and
I went total far.
A little,
yeah, a little bit.
That's
and you guys were talking about you're like, this is what the CIA actually is really like. And Rucka's like, yeah, I got a source. This is what it's totally like. This is the 100% truth. And I was out there on this CIA mission, and I was like, is there another CIA that Rucka knows about that I don't? I was like, this is nothing like one of my experiences.
That's awesome.
That's funny.
I remember him saying that. Yeah. I got a guy, but he'd have to kill me if I told his name.
And it's been this
guy is telling you some falsities.
There is that amazing thing too. Like we did, and it was pure happenstance that, the reality was we couldn't really talk to big names in comics. They didn't give a shit who we were. And the reality, we came to was like, well, we're not going to do anything for an X-Men book. We're not going to do anything for these big books, but there's all these little books at Image or wherever else, Oni and different places. And we love that stuff. So
it was Cullen Bunn who kind of framed that for us. He's like, if you talk to, I forget who at the time was writing X-Men.
They've probably forgotten to.
Yeah, if you guys have Chris Claremont on and that sells an extra 100 copies of X-Men, nobody is ever going to notice. But if you have me or Brian Hurd on and it sells 600 copies of Sixth Gun, that's a big deal.
I bought Sixth Gun because I heard you. I bought Walking. I remember you guys being like, "There's this little book, Walking Dead." If you guys like it, it's in black and white. I remember I was like, okay, I gotta set, because we could get, for some reason we could get Amazon out there, so I could Amazon stuff. It took 2 months, but I could get it eventually to us. And so I remember you guys recommending Walking Dead. You guys recommending Scalped. It was that mid 2000s was such a huge boom because after sort of Bendis came through and sort of Bendis and Brubaker paved the way to this new seriousness in comic, or it's the guys who were, I call them sort of the Alan Moore schools, the guys who had grown up on Alan Moore the way Alan Moore had sort of grown up on Kurt Swan and stuff. So they sort of took that Alan Moore aesthetic of taking these characters seriously and cool, and they just made the best comics. God, what a good age.
I see it's like there was this weird mix of Alan Moore and Warren Ellis.
Yes, and Warren Ellis. Yeah. Exactly.
And so you had guys like Fraction that came out that are doing stuff like Five Fists of Science and then Casanova, but then you also have guys like Jason Aaron who are he's Elmore Leonard for comics.
Yeah, he is. Oh, that's a great comparison. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Elmore Leonard. See, you're good at this. This is why I listen to you. So.
We're still kind of getting our groove back. So Sal just, yeah.
Wait, so you said I could ask, what happened to Tom? Does he hate you now? He became a lawyer or something, someone told me, didn't he?
No. Tom...
He went into the C.I.A.
He was on the show. He was just on the show a couple of weeks ago. We had him on, but...
And you had him
children. Tom had children.
Tom had kids. And
I have kids. It's the worst. I'm a Tom who had kids since I started listening.
Here, this is the thing, though. It's bullshit, because back in the day when these two assholes didn't have kids and I had two kids, I drove my ass out to the city of Chicago every Friday night to go to a fucking dank little comic book store and do this fucking podcast. And now
I thought it was a movement. I thought you were part of a scene 5 minutes ago.
He still bitched about it.
I flip-flop. Yeah. I bitched all the time. That's what I do. No, Tom had kids, and
so here's Tom's tech tonight. I'll try to make it, but my kids have lost their damn minds.
Yeah.
So have mine, and I'm here.
See, Tom's just...
Can I see? Is Tom Versus still up on? Can you get that on iTunes? Can I download that? I was trying to describe what that was to my children. I was like, it's a guy monologuing about a comic for 20 minutes, and it's the funniest fucking thing.
Usually a Gardner Fox comic.
You can still get it, I think, at tomcaters.com. I think you can download it there. I don't think he kept the feed through iTunes still available. He might have, but I know that I think they're on his website, tomcaters.com. Tom is actually a marketing guy now. He's like a...
Did you have to read a lot of Gardner Fox comics before this latest project of yours?
I did, and they are terrible.
They're awful. Gardner Fox is the worst writer ever.
He's not. I know he's a great creator. He's created many things, but as a writer, I mean,
I think the other TK, Tom Cater's always
the other TK.
He described Gardner Fox as you could take any dialogue bubble and switch it around with any character and it would still work.
Yes. Never have so many generic white guys said generic things to generic white women.
Yes.
I mean, there's all these rumors that he was like the guy that was easiest to bully for Weisinger and his editors and Schwartz. And he was the guy who would like
Julie Schwartz.
Yeah, who would be like, okay, you want me to do it? I'll do it. Whatever you want me to do. I'll take 70 notes. I'll do that. As opposed to like John Broome, who was a little more out there and his comics read better now. I read a lot of Gardner Fox for this, sadly.
One of the neatest interviews we did was with Gene Colan before he passed away, and he was not a Julius Schwartz fan.
Not a shock. A lot of people. Well, Julie would not survive in today's Me Too environment. Julie had some problems.
No. But I've been going back, and your book inspired me to go back and read some of the DC archives. And you are correct, sir. They are very interesting stories that are horribly, horribly written.
I remember you guys doing some con, and Tom was next to Carmine Infantino. Like he was
New York Comic Con, very first New York Comic Con.
Wow, I remember that being like, oh, that's so, and now that just seems so historical that Carmine's been gone for like 10 years or something, that you'd be able to just stand next to him and talk to him.
So here's the horrible story.
It was hilarious. Those two together were like...
Oh, they were gold.
It was a fucking sitcom. It was so funny. They could not have gotten along better. And it was like watching the same person through generations.
Really?
They were just busting everybody's balls. And,
Carmine had no interest in talking about comics, and Tom had no interest in talking about comics. He had to sit there and make fun of people with Carmine, make fun of people in cosplay.
That's amazing.
What did he say about
around dressed like Mirror Master, and Carmine would be like, that looks terrible. It was beautiful to behold. Here's the horrible story about this.
Wait.
Oh my God. You killed Carmine Infantino. I knew
it. We almost killed Carmine Infantino. This is horrible. So we go all the way across. This is when New York Comic Con was on 2 levels.
Okay.
So they were like upstairs, and there was the downstairs main.
Was it in Javits still, or was it?
Javits, but it's before it took over all of Javits. They had it weird compartment. There was actually Ursa was in Javits at the same time. There was a health and fitness show in Javits at the same time.
Well, Javits is huge, though. I mean, that's a gigantic convention center.
So we go all downstairs and across the entire fucking floor to go to David Spurlock's booth which is where Carmine and Steranko, those folks, this is the very first New York Comic Con. So, I mean, these are legends. And so we had worked out a deal with Spurlock to get Carmine to sign for Hero Initiative donations. And so Carmine is old and he's not able to move very quickly. So we go about a month and a half, an hour, all the way back through the main floor, through people, up 2 flights of stairs and down through Artist Alley. Takes us literally 40 minutes. And I know that the old fragile man is about at the end where he's just like,
oh, no.
He's like, you're actually endangering my life.
You're going to kill the creator of half of DC Comics.
And I'm looking at Tom, I'm like, we're going to kill Carmine Infantino. We're going to be the people that
we're going to
kill
be famous.
This legend. Here's the horrible part.
That's not the horrible part?
No. Yes, this is the horrible part. After we figure out where we are, there is an elevator bank 25 feet on our fucking table that comes straight down to where his booth was. It would have taken us about 45 seconds to get him to our table.
But one of the stories I was going to tell, I remember Tom had told us that not Jim Starlin, who was the old the guy who took over DC or Marvel after Stan, after
Shooter.
Jim Shooter.
So Shooter comes up to Carmine.
Yes.
And
every story should read like a first issue.
Right.
Who's he? He's 7 feet tall. He's not a small man.
Yeah,
literally
gigantic.
Right. Yeah.
So he comes up to the table as Tom and Carmine is sitting there, and a lot of people did. There were so many people that came up
because Carmine was there.
Because Carmine was there, and just to say nice things to Carmine, to shake his hand, professionals all throughout the industry. So Shooter comes up and he says something to Carmine. Hey, he shakes his hand, blah, 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 and he walks away. And Carmine turns to Tom and goes, Jesus, he got fat. It was the greatest moment of that, But that was that the same convention where we... Well, that was the convention where I talked to Gene Colan. We sat with Gene Colan.
We sat with
for
Gene,
like an hour and a half.
And Gene's wife, which this is a couple years before all that craziness happened.
Yeah.
What happened with him and his wife? That's the one.
Yes.
You guys are all. I don't know that story. What happened? Are you allowed to say it?
Yeah, look it up. Shit got weird.
Shit got weird. Okay.
Google it.
Yeah, Google it. I don't want to speak out.
No, it's just the second time someone says to me, I was like, "What is that about?" Okay, I will Google this when I get off.
Yeah.
I just saw him interviewed. I was just wanting to watch a YouTube of him talking about how I was the slowest artist of my generation. I only did 2 pages a day. I was like, "Oh my god,
2 pages a day.
2 pages a day.
Slacker."
Yeah, well, that was you were talking to that convention was so neat. You're sitting there talking to Gene Colan and recording video, and I'm over sitting talking to Gene Colan's wife, who's telling me all of like the backstories. And that's Gene loved working with Stan. Julie Schwartz was an asshole, and when Gene went to DC,
you don't want to talk about what happened between him and his wife, but you'll fucking throw her under the bus. No problem.
No, I mean, she said that Julie Schwartz was an asshole. I believe that because
I've heard from lots of people that Julie Schwartz is. Well, he's. I mean, you should talk to some of the women who were around him. He was a genuine asshole. I think it's been confirmed by his life.
Well, Gene didn't offer DC for very long, so he left Marvel, went to DC, and he was back pretty quickly. And I think a lot of that was because of Julie Schwartz. That's the story that I got.
Interesting.
We have, suffice it to say, we have found ourselves in some interesting places over the years. And
you're a fulcrum of history, is what you are.
We are a footnote to a footnote of history.
No, you are not. Not in any sort of way.
All right. I want to talk about Strange Adventures.
Okay, yes, back to Gardner Fox.
No.
And Carmine Infantino. The art is beautiful, man. Murphy Anderson, Carmine, that stuff is gorgeous. It's worth it for the art.
The Carmine Murphy Anderson. Boy, was Carmine ever inked by anyone more awesome than Murphy Anderson?
No. If you see Carmine ink himself, it's a whole different, he had a much more sketchy style. Anderson cleans him up a lot. It's
Cleans him up,
interesting.
and he gives him this weird like 50s aesthetic.
Yes. Yeah, that was his. You can't see it, but I have an Atomics Night page back there that Anderson did. Yeah, he's like the king of, if you close your eyes and think of 50s comics, you see.
Well,
Anderson,
I can tell from what's behind you that you hate 50s comics.
Love them. That's my current passion. Yeah.
Okay.
This is all Strange Adventures stuff.
I'm a little bit of a original art nerd. What's your favorite page that you own?
Here we go.
I want to see it.
I hate you fucking
I don't think you can
art collectors.
I mean, the most expensive pages.
I don't care. No, because my most expensive page is not my most favorite page. What's your most favorite page that you own?
Oh God, I don't. I mean, I have an Alex Toth page I love.
Wow,
Toth's my favorite artist. Which you can't see because it's over there. The computer won't turn that much. I mean, what's my favorite? I have a page. I mean, I have a page I'm most proud of getting because it was the only time I got the Better of the Dealer. So I look at it. I was turning these pages and they were random Kurt Swan pages for $500 a pop.
Oh, that's cool.
And I hit one and I was like, why is this so familiar? I was like, oh my God, this is Whatever Happens to the Man of Tomorrow, the famous Alan Moore story, a page from that book. Ooh. But it was just thrown in with all these Kurt Swan pages.
What?
So for $500, I was like, can I purchase this from you? He's like, yeah, why do you want this one? I was like, it reminds me of something in my childhood. Can I get it right now?
Just pick that up.
just put it right now.
Alan Moore written, Kurt Swan drawn page.
Yeah, from the man of my
I love you and hate you all at the same moment.
Legendary. What page is it? Do you?
It's the page where he's having sort of the crisis of conscience, and he talks to Perry about, I don't know what to do about Lois, and it's where he makes the decision to kill himself. Basically.
Oh my God.
So yeah, it's I can see it right here. Sorry, I'm looking at it, and so it was I triumphed over the system.
That's terrific.
Yeah, so I'm proud of that one.
Yeah,
it's funny. I have some pages here that I'm sure you're responsible for. Like I have a page from Fell because you guys recommended Fell.
Oh wow! So it's Templesmith. Nice.
Templesmith, yeah. I don't know. I got challenged. I have 2 Darwin Cook pieces.
Wow.
You lucky bastard.
I don't know. I love Bloom County. I have a Bloom County strip on my wall, and I have stuff that for my books. Like I have a beautiful Clayman page, and from Vision I have this. I don't know if you can see this over here, but I can't. But I have Tom Fowler's cover for my novel, and I have a splash page of Vision, which is my favorite page of that book.
So I was going to say that's as a comic. I mean, you're a comic nerd. You're a bona fide comic nerd, and now
don't tell.
Yeah, and now you're working on some most important comics coming out, or the biggest selling comics coming out in the industry. Do you ever talk to Mitch or any of your other artists and say, yeah, so cut me a deal on that page?
No, I do the opposite. It's hard because I'll see pages of theirs I want, and I know if I tell them I want them, they'll give them to me. Yeah. And so but I don't want to rob them of thousands of dollars. So it'll be I'll find their agent and be like, hey man, give me that page and I'll pay you. I have to tell him and he's going to give it to you free. Just don't fucking tell him. It's more that it's the opposite of that. If I say I like something, they'll give it to me. Mitch gave me.
That's another thing is, it's like you're a fantastic writer.
Oh, well, I'm no great Rucka, but I try.
But you have also been gifted with some fantastic artists throughout your career.
I wanted to ask about that.
You've not been given any dud artist at all. I mean, and Sal will probably ask this. I mean, have you take on artists blindly, or have you been given the freedom to go out and say, I really want to work with that guy?
Yeah.
I find that I do best with guys who are yet to be discovered. I feel like it's like the Rick Remender way to do it. Remender is the king of this. He's the best that ever was. of like finding the guys who are just on the cusp and giving them the right story and then blowing them up.
Yeah.
Oh, he was right. He was doing stuff with Francavilla when no one from like other than like Ape Comics knew who he was.
Yeah.
There's a long list of guys that Remender has worked with that now, you know, are just superstars. And I absolutely agree. He has had that knack. If he wasn't a writer, he should be whoever the guy is that picks artists for other books, because man, he is good at it.
Was Opeth the guy that worked that? I mean, did he work with Remender before anyone else? Was Jerome in that group?
Yeah, Jerome, and then I like Tony Moore.
Yeah,
and,
Tony.
I have a lot of people.
Yeah,
you guys know better than I did because that's a Chicago school, right? That stuff, or at least Midwest.
Yeah, more not Chicago area necessarily, but
yeah, my artist. If I have a superpower, it's one of the things I do is I can see guys who have been sort of misused. You know, they've been put on sort of the wrong kind of thing, and if a lot of guys they'll have incredible talent, but the people aren't writing the right scripts for them. So I try to adjust my scripts for the guys, and I think that sort of helps bring out what's best in them. So I do a lot better in that situation. I've worked with superstar artists a few times, you know, where a guy comes to me and they're like, okay, you get David Finch, you get Tony Daniel. And that tends to be not as, although the art produces beautiful, it doesn't tend to be as rewarding as like working with a Mitch right before he got big, or working with Clay or before he got big, or working with Gabriel Walta on something. It's better to find, I don't know, there's the guys that are hungry or something, or I don't know what the right term is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're hungry for a while, so you know I can be. No, you talk about Remender. Remender brings up those guys. Remender fucking humped it for a really long time, and I think he feeds off that energy, and I can see that with you. One of the things I've seen in that always resonates with me. You have this. I would be really interested to talk to you and your wife about your relationship, because you have this really
right over there. We could reach out and say hi.
You have this really interesting and very real way, which we've seen in Mr. Miracle and now with Adam Strange's story of
Batman.
I've written a lot of romance comics.
They are absolutely romance comics, and you see these really naked, real relationships, and it's something that I can read a Tom King comic, and it's like, yeah, here's this very quiet moment between these two people that are talking about this situation as only a very close married couple can do. And then this switch to this, big action sequence, and then back to this very quiet conversation about this moment. And it's only, I hate saying that it's only people that are in very close, intimate relationships that understand that, but it's only
any other kind
that really close, intimate relationships that can understand that, right?
Yeah, no, my wife is, she's got to be the number one influence on how I write. But that's because I spend the most time with her. She's the person I'm with at the beginning and the end of each day. My wife and I met after college, so we were 22. We worked literally desks next to each other at the Justice Department. So, we've been through 2 wars together. We've been through the C.I.A. training. We've been through the, quitting the job, being unemployed, raising the kids. Even now, 20 years later, I'm going through this thing where my wife and I have been locked up in a house for 5 weeks with 3 children. I'm still in awe that we don't just tear each other apart, that we still, we find, I feel like at this time, maybe I'm sure we all feel this way, but you look outside your house, you're like, it's just us. It's this little pod of people against the whole world. And somehow we have to survive this long enough. And
is it part of the DOJ thing? It's like you get up, you have your coffee, you have your breakfast, you talk about kind of what's on. Then you go and possibly have to be involved with killing people. And then you come home and you have dinner and
allegedly
talk about what's going on in the world and then go to bed.
I think my wife is a Midwestern. She's from the northern suburbs of Chicago.
Oh,
she's
okay.
A White Sox fan because her
Go Sox. My wife is also a Sox fan.
Diehard Sox fan. Went to every game when they won in 05. She's from Barrington.
Barrington.
Yeah, that's my wife.
Oh, yeah.
And so she's very like the best thing I could recommend to anybody to become, but like marry a Midwesterner. I can't emphasize that enough. Like I'm from LA. My mother was a studio executive. I sort of grew up in that world. And it's, like there, it's all about being famous and it's all about your career. It's all about sort of people in my high school didn't become famous. Like it hit them really hard and they had this like a hump they had to get over. Whereas my wife, she's just about like get through the day, get the job done. You know, like she's very much like keep your head down, and so we balance each other out because I'm this like.
And then come home and make a hot dish.
And come home and make a hot dish, yeah. Like she's like, she's a very like focus on the solution, not the problem. Whereas I'm from like this neurotic LA where like there the world's on fire, and so like we somehow complement each other in that, you know. Where like I'm like holy shit, there's gonna be a meat shortage. We gotta order a deep freeze. Like she's like let me go measure. I was like no time, I'm buying it now. You know, like it's like so like when it gets here, she'll find out where it goes. But at least I was the one who pulled the trigger on buying it. You know, it's like we complement each other.
That's awesome.
Well, that brings up. I have a sort of a very writerly question, or probably series of questions to ask you about your process and I've in preparation for this, I've read a lot of your. I mean, I had read a lot of your stuff before, but I kind of went back and reread a lot of stuff just to kind of be familiar with it. But
at least it's not a lot of words, so hopefully
it goes quick, goes fast. No, but one of the and I happened to watch an interview with you. You were talking. It was actually you were on a panel with Frank Miller, and you were talking about Batman, and you were talking. No, I'm sorry. It wasn't that one. It was a different interview with you.
I sounded so cool in this on a panel with Frank Miller.
You were,
damn right.
Yeah.
That's just every other Saturday. Me and Frank are hanging like this, you know?
Well, anyway, it doesn't matter where you were at, but you mentioned that, a lot of the sort of traditional story structures are sort of the hero trying to figure out that one thing that will fix him. And then the story is about him finding that one thing. And you kind of don't like that because you don't feel that that's very realistic. Like we never, as human beings, we never really figure out that we don't have one simple thing that sort of answers all of our problems and gives us a solution. And I really appreciate that. And I can really see that in your work. But one of the things I also noticed with a lot of your stories is that you seem to sort of work from a place of the hero or the main protagonist doesn't realize that they kind of have what they need and they're creating these problems themselves. Would you say that that's kind of true? That is that something that you kind of find yourself at one point in your life, or is that just something that you enjoy exploring?
No, I do think a lot of my work is about sort of the tension of the desire for adventure and not realizing. It's almost like what we were just talking about there. Like I feel like sort of this idea that people want to go on a hero's journey, or they want to because that's why I joined the C.I.A. for all the noble reasons because it was after 9/11 and I want to save the world. But in a more honest way, I wanted to be part of that fight because I had been raised on comic books and I was like, to me it was like
fight of good against evil. It was
fight, good against. It was when someone comes at you, you go back at them. I literally I was like, what would Captain America do? You fucking join something, right? Like so, and it was that idea of like seeking out that adventure, going into the woods, or however you want to do that metaphor, going into the fungible places where the danger happens, and how you sort of survive that, and how it changes you, and how it does make you sort of. For me, what made me super realize was that I couldn't function there unless I had the support of my wife and my family and stuff, and that the basis of that stuff was what was super important, and that you don't become a different person. You don't become as much as you'd like to think like, okay, now I'm in this adventure, I'm this new person. I'm not Luke Skywalker anymore. I'm a fucking Jedi. No, you're still Luke Skywalker, man. You still are motivated by this bad thing that happened to you when you're 6 or whatever it is. Like, it stays with you. You're still yourself.
Does it come down more to perception? I mean, one of the things I've sort of realized in my own life recently, just getting older and hopefully wiser, is sort of like how my perceptions of things affect my happiness. Like whether or not my job, my home life, my whatever it is, a lot of times it's just sort of this perception that I have of what maybe I should be doing or I should have, or what my life should look like. I have this imagination or this idea.
Why am I not feeling very well right now?
And I just wonder, because I kind of see that in your work of some of these characters where, like take back Batman, it's sort of this thing of like, I often see him as this, tragic character because he doesn't realize that he's constantly beating himself up about what happened to his parents. And he's constantly forcing himself to do these things. And he doesn't realize that he has the family that he lost, that he's already, you know what I mean? Like whether it's Wonder Woman and Superman or Robin and Nightwing and Dick and all these people that are Alfred or whoever it is, he doesn't realize that. And that's one of the things that keeps him motivated, but it's also the tragedy is that he doesn't realize that he has the family that he lost. And if he ever does realize that, maybe he's not Batman anymore. And I get that, but it's sort of like, it's that perception. Like he's perceives himself as having lost something and having to get revenge for it, but he's already replaced that 100 times over and doesn't get it.
I think that's exactly right. It's like on some level you can control your own reality, and I think it's tough for kids who were raised in comic books because we want to be the hero of our own story, and it's at some point you become like, right now we're 40, I got this fucking virus around me, I can't fight this. All I can do is take care of my family. And that's to a comic book, to a guy who's raised in comic books, it feels impotent. It feels almost numbing to realize that you just can't go out and fight it. But there also is something, once you get beyond that sort of second grade thinking that you were raised with, there's something heroic in just taking care of your family and getting through your day. And for guys who go to work every day and they make money to put on the table to feed their family, to keep them together. Like, that's a heroic act. It seems, because we don't read fiction about those guys, it doesn't seem heroic, but the everyday can be just as meaningful and huge as whatever Batman does. In fact, to me, all superhero comics are metaphors for sort of everyday triumphs and disappointments.
I see that.
Your comics hammer that home.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
They do.
But a question. You do
Strange Adventures.
Oh, sorry.
There's a moment at a book signing where there is
where he's shaking a hand.
Where he's shaking a hand. It's like, "Hi, I'm Adam. Can I sign your book?"
That'll never happen again. That's already a historical document.
And there is an Uber fan that walks up and has very obviously Sheriff of Babylon, Mr. Miracle, and Strange Adventures. Is that you?
Are you all your own heroes? Do you see yourself
as my own heroes?
Is that it bears a very uncanny resemblance to one Mr. Tom King. Is that you?
I don't believe so. That I'm sure if you read my scripts, they're fairly bare. I'm sure it was just like fan walks up. So that's all in Mitch's imagination. So that's Mitch's subconscious putting me in the story.
I kind of like the idea of you as it's a very meta thing of here is Tom King, comic fan in this comic being uber comic guy. And just knowing you from before all of this happened, there's certainly a lot of the surrealness of this. I mean, it's like Eisner Award-winning best comic writer Tom King. I mean, did you ever think that you would hear that?
No.
That's kind of nuts, right?
It is astoundingly nuts.
Yeah.
I like I said, you guys got me back into comics. So it inspired me to write. I wanted to be a writer.
Put that on us.
Oh no, it's 100%, dude. You're responsible for all the soy boy Batcat stuff. I'm sending all the guys after you.
Hey, I didn't fucking kill Alfred, asshole.
You killed Alfred.
No,
exactly.
I'm not biting that.
Oh,
Definitely you.
we're gonna put a pin in this.
Punched Robin in the
come
face.
back and talk about Pennyworth, but go ahead.
But I tried to become a writer a few times in my life. I mean, I interned at Marvel in DC, and even got a gig back in the college. But every time I tried to write,
interning for Chris Claremont. I mean,
I was Chris Claremont's assistant in '99. But every time I tried to write, it was so precious. Like I'd write like a sentence. I was always trying to win a Nobel Prize with my first paragraph of my first novel, and it was just super shitty. And so what really brought me over the hump was I was reading a book about comics history, which will go unnamed because it was written by a pedophile. You guys know which one it is if you're in the comic knowledge.
Yeah,
we didn't know that at the time.
No.
And so I was reading this book, and he was talking about sort of the old comic writers and how they wrote just to make money. Like they wrote, like Gardner Fox didn't write because he's like, God damn, I'm going to change the world with this next story where a little science solves everything. He was like,
cards.
I gotta pay rent, I got car payment. I gotta, and I was like, and to me, I was like, all right, what if? And that was like such a mind opener to me. I was like, what if
Kirby wasn't drawing 1,000 pages a year because he's fucking fun?
No, he doesn't. No. If you watch, there's that YouTube. I just watched it. Well, there's a documentary in the interview with Kirby, and Kirby says, "My great inspiration was," and he thinks about it. He goes, "Sales." It's like
poverty.
Yeah, poverty. That was his. So, and like that was me getting over the hump. Like, okay, Tom, don't write to win awards or anything. Just write to get a gig. Right to get a job, right to make money for your family, and that made me throw away the preciousness and get through that first paragraph finally. And when I entered comics, all I wanted to do was just make a living. And by the time I read my first comic, I'd been unemployed for 2 years. And by unemployed, I mean I was a full-time house dad. I took care of my kids while my wife went to work. And so I was just like, any gig will do. So it's insane to me that somehow through the process of throwing away the desire to sort of be literary anyway, I came back to it.
Did you, once again, thinking about your work and kind of going over it and trying to formulate sort of questions about it, which I hate kind of doing, but I have you here and I never get to really talk to you about, writing and I love writing. I love it too. I wish I was a writer. I'm not. I'm the, wannabe writer, but I love everything about writing. I love studying it and the craft of it. So I'm going to ask you this shit just because I really like your.
There isn't one writer in the world who doesn't think he's the wannabe writer. I feel like I'm the wannabe writer. I was today I was on the phone writing a pilot for a TV show for a movie star. I was on the phone writing a movie for the New Gods movie, and then I wrote a Backhat script, and I still feel like a fucking failure. It's like, that's just like how that's like part of the gig. I don't know why that's the way it is.
That's creatives, man. That's creatives. It's you're always trying to outcreate your last failure, which it's
the imposter syndrome. We talked about that with Tony Moore. Like, everybody has that. No matter how successful you get, it's like this thing. When are they going to figure out that I'm full of shit and I've been faking it this entire time?
That's exactly right. When are they going to discover my tricks? I just repeat the same 3 things over and over.
Well, so that brings up, and one of the things I noticed that you seem to do is you kind of look at every page as a scene to some degree. It seems like to me. More than most writers. Like this is, you kind of try and write a complete scene in each and every page. Was that a conscious thing that developed, or was that just something that sort of was from? Well, I mean, you were a novelist first, so I mean, how did you kind of get to that idea? Because I see so many writers that don't do that. That don't sort of look at a page and go, okay, I have to complete this scene here, and then go to the next scene, and then go to the next scene. Or is it more, Is it even that? Am I full of shit? Am I lying? You know, am I seeing something that's not there?
No, I think you're seeing exactly the right thing, and I think it's one of my keys to success. So don't tell people to do it.
Well, nobody listens to this fucking show. So
thank God.
Yeah.
Thank the Lord. Yes, I don't know. I think to me it's the most natural thing in the world when you're writing a comic book. You write them one page by a time. When you finish that page, you start on a new page to be like, okay, each page has to contain its own sort of story arc with the tension building and breaking and tension building and breaking. I mean, that's how you write chapters of a book. That's how you write. I don't know another way to do it. Like I don't know, maybe it's how I got into it. Because my first story I wrote for Tom Fowler was for Vertigo. Mm-hmm. And it was an 8-issue story. Like I said, I did that book that I gave you guys, and it was a huge flop and nobody bought it. So like, it's really hard to sell a first book. It's super hard to sell a second book when they already know that your first book flopped.
Still available on Amazon, I believe.
For 1 penny. Don't pay more than that for it, because Lord knows I'm not getting any royalties.
Are you always conscious of the page flip?
Always.
I hear a lot of really good artists and creators claim said just always be conscious of the page flip.
I'm less conscious of it than I used to be. I think in my beginning I was more, only putting splashes on even pages so that it'll be on the flip, because a comic starts at 1 and then it's a turn, so 2 is always two's on the left and 3 is on the right. But the more I do it, the more I realize, because Marvel does it a little bit differently, but at DC you don't see your final your final paginator or whatever you call it. The one that has the ads in it.
Yeah.
So they can put ads in that can totally throw stuff off.
Sure.
And so, you'll do all that planning to make sure that you have a page flip for 12 and they put in a goddamn Snickers ad and it's on.
Yeah, because the reveal is a big thing. You take the ads out and then you put it into a trade, and it's like, but then it all goes to digital and flipping on a pad. And yeah, it's
even
crazy.
A trade though, like, because I did Omega Men, which was like super formalistic. Like every single book was, it mirrored itself. The first 10 pages mirrored the next 10 pages. So page 1 matched page 20 in terms of the layouts.
You doing what, 9 panel grids?
All 9 panel grids, but they were merged. So like some of them would be 3 panels and some of them would be, and so. Yeah, and that was, and then that went throughout the series. So like issue 1 mirrored issue 12 because it made it like an Omega symbol. I did not pull it off. There's like 3 or 4 pages that don't match. So
you got canceled after 7.
After 3, I got canceled after 3.
After 3, okay.
It was the least selling comic in Marvel and DC. I got the call after issue 3 from DiDio. Sorry to tell you this, kiddo.
Yeah, but you got
resurrected though, right?
It did. It got resurrected. Yeah. Thanks to Twitter. That was the first big like Twitter thing. 2000. I don't know when that was. 12, 13.
And all those Twitter users bought 0 copies of Omega Man. So.
But I put on my name to this day, New York Times bestselling writer Tom King. The only reason it's New York Times bestselling is Omega Men made the New York Times bestselling list before, because Batman would have made it if Batman had been around. They took comics off New York Times for a while. It's back on now, but
jerks.
So, my best-selling New York Times still comes from Omega Men, though it was so low-selling.
That's awesome.
But hey, Omega Men just out in hardcover. Order from your goddamn local comic book shop.
I absolutely will. Which speaking, I mean, you've had some series that have been 6 issues, 12 issues,
12 issues,
12 issues,
100 issues,
102.
Which has.
Was it 105?
12 and 3 kind of shoehorned in there. Yeah. I think you're at a really nice sweet spot in your career right now where you can please say, I'm going to do a 24-issue series. I'm pitching a 24-issue series or a 60 series. Do you approach projects where it's like, I've got an idea for 12 issues, and then if it takes off, then we can run with it forever, however long? I mean, do you plan stuff out in an issue? Do you say 6 issues, 12 issues, 24, 100, whatever? Or are you just be like, it's going to be what it's going to be?
Right now, I'm only doing 12-issue maxi series. and then like a specials here and there, a short story or an annual or something.
I love that you call them maxi series because that's such a throwback.
I know, right? Come on, a mini is 4 to 6 and a maxi is 12. Everyone
Maxi
knows that.
series.
Maxi series.
Do you like writing that way, like a complete story, 12 issues instead of, I mean, obviously you did a complete story with Batman, but that was a huge run, you know. Do you prefer something more like Mr. Miracle, like Strange Adventures, where it's, okay, here's the 12 issue complete story, you know, start to finish, and you don't have to worry about anything else?
Yeah, I mean, Batman was much harder to write than Mr. Miracle was, despite the fact that Mr. Miracle is probably a much more ambitious project.
Right.
Just because Batman there was just so much logistics involved in terms of, you know, you're on a twice-month schedule. You always have to have an A-list artist. Most A-list artists these days can do 7 to 8 books a year. So you're doing 24 issues. So that means you need 2 main guys and then 3 backup guys, all whom have to get art, and you have to adjust your styles to each one, adjust the stories to each one. And then you're dealing with big editorial because you're on the best-selling book, you have the event stuff, and it was just so much to balance.
Mm-hmm.
So I prefer to be contained with one artist where you can have sort of a mind meld of an artistic thing and tell one story that has a beginning and a middle and an end, and create a trade for people that sort of, here, you come into a comic book shop, you get a trade, you get a full story, you can let it go. And then if you want to, you know, you read Vision, you like that, you want more, here's Mr. Miracle. You know, like,
and it's just
it's so much easier. It's just so much fun.
I think it's so much, like, I think you are able to put your stamp on it so much better than, like, as much as your Batman run is obviously your Batman run, you know, when you're doing that kind of a story, you sort of have ebb and flow and
of course,
you know, that many issues where, you know, like Mr. Miracle is such a unique thing. You know what I mean? Like that, it's just like, boom, here it is. Here's the whole story. One, it's gorgeous, obviously. I mean, you know, Mitch took his art to a whole new level for that book. And you said it, ambitious. It is a really ambitious book that I think, did you have trouble? First of all, I guess, did you have trouble like selling that at all to DC of doing that book? Or
they gave it to me. It was a makeup book for...
Really?
Yeah, Mitch and I were supposed to do The War of Jokes and Riddles, which became a Batman Volume 5. And I pitched that to them as like a Wire-esque crime drama series to do like with Mitch and I. You know, we just got Sheriff of Babylon. He was like the crime. He's a crime war guy. It was like, you know... And they're like, they call me one day and they're like, Tom, we love that idea so much. Jokes and Riddles. We want you to put it in the main title. And they're like, great news. And I was like, well, can Mitch do it? And they're like, no, Mitch isn't good enough for the main title. They actually said that, which is, he's won two Eisners for best artist. And they're like, isn't that great news? And like for the editors, it was great news because it was a bigger story. But for me, it was like, I just lost the book. And that's a third of my income, right? So like, that's a big hit to take. And I was like, yeah, great news, but I just lost. And they're like, well, we'll give you some makeup books. So literally I went out to drinks with Dan DiDio. He drunk me under the table. And like, we were both smashed out of our minds. And he said, and he threw it out to me. He's like, how about Mr. Miracle? I was like, what he said, he's like, I want you to do Vision at DC. And Vision had been a big success and, you know, bestseller and won some bunch of awards. I was like, yeah, no problem. Twice in a row, you know, because I was stupid. So so that's how it started. It was like a backup book. They gave a pity book, maybe.
What was
real quick on the Vision stuff?
Nothing you do is real quick. Go ahead though.
I love listening to it though. I'm having the best time. Total.
It's kind of the basis for WandaVision.
I mean, I don't know for sure.
Was that fucking quick enough for you, Sal?
I'm very involved in the Warner Brothers side because I'm writing the New Gods movie, so I know a lot about that shit that I can't talk about. I don't know much about the Marvel side, except that, I mean, I have buy-in in some of the characters.
It looks like your book, dude.
I think it's thematically very stolen from my book. So I would say they took the thematic ideas and expanded it into their own vision. Yeah. I think.
The off-camera question is: are you getting paid for that shit?
a little.
Off camera.
A little
Off-camera.
bit.
A little.
All right, before that horseshit question.
Speaking of maxi series,
good
was
God.
this the first maxi series?
Can it be? I don't know. What do you consider a maxi series?
I think this is the first one that was ever considered maxi series because it was a 12-issue story, right?
Yeah. Well, Brian, wow, man. I have that copy of that very book up there.
This changed shit for me when it
So
rose.
good.
I
So
love
good.
it.
I love it. I probably read it because you recommended it.
No shit. We were. I was.
I
like,
remember you
I
talking
was
about
like
that
14. You were like 8.
No, but I mean, I remember getting that book being overseas and getting it sent to me. So it was definitely something I got at that time.
I remember
great.
Chris talking about that book on the show for sure. You talked about that book.
See?
I guarantee it.
If you talk about it, I bought it.
Watt 3000 is what we're talking about for the non-video stream.
Oh yeah, we got to remember people will only listen to this. Not
Yes,
everyone's
Mike
gonna-
W. Barr in Boland.
Okay, so when
I had a horrible. I ran into Mike W. Barr at the Suicide Squad premiere, and I love his stuff. But I started talking to him, and I totally thought he was Mike Barron. But that's so close, guys. Mike Barr, Mike Barron. That's
I
like
loved
fucking.
Badger.
Oh, 100%. No, I was like, oh, dude, you're fucking Punisher, man. That's the best. And when you were on Flash, he's like, I never wrote Punisher in my life. I don't know what you're talking. I was like, oh shit. I have mistaken Mike Barr for Mike Barron. Retreat.
it's all right. It happens.
You and
It
Rude,
happens. What are you
best
gonna
team
do?
ever.
He was not cool about it. Yeah, some people would be cool about that. He was not cool about it.
Boy, when we had Rude on, speaking of Mike Barron, we had Rude on, and he threw Barron under so many buses, it was actually uncomfortable for us.
Oh my God.
A lot of that interview was uncomfortable for
A
us.
lot. Oh, the whole Bruce Lee thing.
I
Yeah.
got that though. So.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about going back to Mr. Miracle.
Sure.
When did you sort of like? I guess what was the genesis of that story? So, because it's such an interesting story to me, and it's kind of so out there. I mean, I find it very I don't know, psychedelic. It's very, it's a strange story. It's a weird, fascinating, interesting story. But like, when did you come up with the whole dark side is part of it? Like, what I'm trying to formulate it in my head of like, okay, he's writing this story. He has an idea for where it wants to go, but when did that pop into your brain of like, I'm going to use dark side is as an element, not just of the story, but like visually everything. I mean, it's sort of this cohesive thread throughout the whole book. When did that occur to you, or how did that come about? Do you even have it?
No, yeah, I remember the exact moment. So when I first got the book, it's like the drunk conversation I was in Baltimore. So this is New York Comic Con. So it's like 2 weeks later. And I come up with a concept. The concept was immediate. They're like, okay, what can't you escape from? He can't escape from death. He kills himself and he wakes up. And then I was like, I don't know what happened next. I didn't know what the next part was. Like, what happens when he wakes up? And I ran into, I was in New York Comic Con, I ran into Julian Lytle, who does a web comic called Ants.
Julian.
Yeah,
You know, do you guys know Julian?
Sure.
Yeah, all right, yeah.
I argue with Julian all on Facebook because I have this persona that I hate millennials, which he is one, and so Julian and I always fight. We beat.
Julian is one of the smartest people I've ever met, and maybe the smartest comic book person. I mean, he knows everything about everything.
Julian's pimp his webcomic. What is it?
Ants.
Yes.
Yeah. And literal Mr. Miracle wouldn't exist, and he's consulting on the New Gods movie. If he hasn't, because he's the world's expert on Kirby and New Gods. So
wow, that's awesome.
Julian,
I love Julian.
He's also a DC guy. He's at my house having dinner with my kids every week. Or he used to be before this stuff. So, anyways,
that's awesome. Julian's awesome. Julian's guy.
Yeah. So I ran to Julian and we were talking, and he's like, "What are you working on next?" Mr. Miracle, and I was like, "I don't know what to do with it." He's like, "Oh, Mr. Miracle's on it." And he's like, "A Dark Side, you know about Dark Side." I was like, "Oh yeah, he's like, I know he's not, but he's just, I mean, he's a Thanos ripoff. Thanos is like the better version of Dark Side." And he's like, "What are you talking about, man? What about Dark Side is?" I was like, "What's Dark Side is?" And he goes, "Dude," he's like, "Have you ever like, you had to make two decisions, and one was a good one was a bad one, and you just couldn't help yourself and chose the bad one. Darkseid is. And it like went on like that, where he's like, you ever wake up and you have no hope inside you and you have to lay in bed for the rest of the day? Darkseid is. And like he was taking what Grant had done on like two covers and sort of translating into like this idea that sort of evil exists. It's all from Julian. And we had been doing, Mitch and I had been doing from the very beginning of Sheriff, these black panels which had bang in them. It was basically to hide the violence because I didn't want to show a little girl being shot in the first issue. And I stole it from the Why the Last Man. Brian Vaughn used it in Why the Last Man, where he's a black panel with white writing in it. And so we've been using that, and he was giving me this speech, and I was into it. I was like, man, Darkseid is, that's perfect. And I just in my head, I saw that our black panel with white writing saying Darkseid is, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna put that in there. I mean, I saw it, I was like, that's what we'll do. We'll just when something really bad happens, we'll do a black panel with white art, and it just says Darkseid is, and and so that's where it started. No, I think it hit.
Julian.
That's awesome.
From Julian Lytle, absolutely. That was he is the origin of that phrase. It's Julian.
This is all like the original podcast mafia from like 2008.
This is where I come from. These are my people. Just like like Fraction and Kelly Sue, they came up through the Ellis boards or the Bendis boards. I came up through podcasts. That's what I came.
Jesus.
That was I was
we unleashed upon the world.
You did. Well, I tried to tell you at the beginning. So when I was a kid, I didn't talk to anybody about comics at my level. I'd never heard anyone who understood comics at my level ever in my life. A friend, I mean, a little bit when I went and worked as an intern, but even then, it's like a professional. Chris Claremont didn't like comics; he just wrote them,
Roy Thomas was the only guy that made comics and liked them at that time.
I think he might be the only. Yeah. So it's like when I heard you guys in podcasts, I was like, oh my god! I was like, there are people like me. It was genuinely moving to hear you guys talk comics at a level that I thought only I sort of understood.
Yeah, it was a million islands out in the world, all people to connect through an iPod.
And so. Yeah, 100%. So I don't know, where were we doing? Yeah, so Darkseid. Oh yeah, so but I think the Darkseid is thing took off. So I mean, I've talked about this a bunch, but I had sort of one of those Sopranos, first scene of Sopranos, where you go to the hospital and you don't know if you're having a heart attack, you're going crazy, and
you had one of those.
Yeah, I had one of those. Yeah, where you're
really?
Just like, yeah, and a panic attack, and it was 2016. It was right before Batman #1 came out, which I'm sure was unrelated, but
coincidence, mere coincidence.
Yeah, no pressure, Tom.
But the thing was, I was at the happiest point in my life. Like I had these three beautiful kids. My wife was doing super well. I mean, my career was finally taking off.
You were an imposter. You were right. You knew that as soon as that book came out, everybody was going to know you were a fake, a phony. Your career was over. That's what it was.
Yeah. And so I came out of that, and so this is I mean, this must have been. It was my wife's birthday, so April 2016. So exactly 4 years ago from this week. And then, I mean, I don't know the politics of it, but like the whole Trump thing happened, and the world just got really weird, really
Cubs
fast.
won the goddamn World Series.
The Cubs won the World Series. It really felt like one of those things where I had woken up. Because I mean, I was with my kids and I had that blackout where I was like, oh, I'm dying. Yeah, it was fucking weird.
Fucking weird.
The Patriots had that weird comeback, which didn't make any sense.
Dude, it just never fucking ended
against Atlanta, and I was, and so that's when I was, and then everyone's like, we need people to write about it. It was like, wow, did I wake up? Am I still fucking alive? Did I wake up in some bizarre other reality?
I'm still convinced. There was a moment in I think it was whenever they turned on the new Hadron Collider or something, like everything went to shit. Like the whole fucking, our entire existence just fucking took a shit on us. I don't know.
Did I wear a mask to go outside now? What the fuck? That's not normal. It can't possibly be our reality.
You're writing superheroes, so it'll come in handy. This experience, I expect at some point we're going to see a 12-issue maxi series of Kite Man stranded somewhere where he can't escape, and it's just going to be him sort of devolving into some sort of rambling psychosis, and And
don't be dissing Kite Man.
No, I'm not. I'm waiting for the maxi series. It's only a matter of
He's
time.
awesome in the Harley series on DC Universe.
It's awesome.
Love me some Kite
So
Man.
okay, so you I don't think you got to the point though. You had this attack.
So I had this, and then that's when Mr. Miracle. I was like, because everyone was like, the only bright spot about Trump is that, you know, we'll, like, punk rock was in the 80s, so we'll get good art.
Right.
And I was like, fuck, that's on me. Like, I have.
Come on.
I was like, I have like one of if not the best artists in comics. I have a totally free runway. I have to fucking write something that's meaningful about this time and about this experience. And so I wrote about that idea of sort of like waking up and not knowing if life is real or not because it's so fucking crazy and crappy, and sort of having to, in that moment, find things that can get you through it, which is what that was about, like me and my wife and the first, yes. And then that became basically 3 series, that sort of concept. What Batman became, what Heroes in Crisis became. Like all 3 of those were sort of about that experience of sort of dealing with sort of crazy anxiety and the real world is seeming to repress you, and sort of having to talk about it with your loved ones and getting over it. Like that.
Was it disappointing that? I mean, I'm. This is kind of anecdotal, but was it disappointing? It seemed like Heroes in Crisis didn't perform. I really liked it. I really did. I thought it was very good, and I think people maybe misrepresented it or.
Heroes in Crisis sold a ton, and I love it. I fucking love it. I read it recently, and the art is gorgeous. The story's fun. It's actually funny. It gets into a lot of deep stuff. But yeah, dude, it fucking hit. It didn't hit a nerve, or it hit the wrong nerve or something. I read what made me understand Heroes in Crisis, and I could be totally wrong about this, but this is my theory. I was reading this. Who's that guy who wrote it was a screenplay book. William. Oh fuck, I can't remember his name. Anyways, William. He wrote a screenplay book, and he was talking about like the successes and failures in his life, and he said he wrote it. What?
William Golden.
William Golden. The Golden. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Adventures in the Screen Trade. It's like the most famous screenwriting book. So. Fuck me for forgetting it. And he said he wrote this movie that he loved. It was an airplane movie. It was about an airplane pilot. And in the first act, the airplane pilot, and it's a test pilot, and he's on the wing, and there's like a girl doing a performance on the wing, and she gets tangled up and she's about to fall, and he crawls off to get the girl to save her, and he reaches out to get the girl, and the girl slips through his hands and falls to the ground and dies. And he was really proud of the scene, and the rest of the movie is about sort of him recovering from this and learning to live his life. And the guy who was playing the part was Robert Redford. And he said he went one day to watch the movie with the pilot audience, super proud of it, super proud of his job. And as soon as the audience saw Robert Redford reach out for the girl and not save her, as soon as they saw their hero, their idol, sort of the best American man alive at that point, they did not buy the rest of the movie.
He failed, so...
Yeah, you fail. He's like, if that had been Robert De Niro or Al Pacino, or, you know, there were certain, like, dark is wrong, but like certain, like...
Anti-hero
kind of people. But they were never going to buy that Robert Redford went out on the wing of that plane and didn't save that girl. And for the rest of the movie, they were just not into the movie. They just couldn't get past that. To me, that's what Heroes in Crisis was. Like, people putting Wally West at the center of that at the time was just the wrong move to do. And it wasn't my call to do that. They picked him for me, but I would never do it again. People just weren't in the mood to have Wally West go through what he went through.
Yeah. Well, I also think it's
they just were never going to buy it after that.
Anything Crisis related too. Like, I think it's just like almost one of those things where if it's a crisis book, and what I loved about Heroes in Crisis was it was completely different. It was, you know what I mean? Like, it was a crisis, but it was a completely different kind of, it was a Tom King type of crisis. and that, you know, I feel like you are truly a guy that writes superhero comics for adults.
Yeah.
And that's not and I don't mean to say like they're adult comics, but you write truly.
Mr. Miracle is a fucking war book. Well, I mean, it's a war comic.
But you deal with adult situations. You deal with things that adults deal with, and not.
I do have more sex scenes in my comics than most. I admit it.
Mr. Miracle and what I'm seeing at a Strange Adventure. I mean, they're war comics with. I mean,
life is war.
Not with, but with like real intimacy. Real intimacy.
I mean, I read Watchmen. I'm sure, maybe like you guys did, but I feel like I was way too young to read it.
All of us were.
Yeah, I was like 10 or 11 or something, and it blew my fucking mind.
Yes.
And but not in a bad way, in a wonderful way.
Yeah.
So to me, I always just feel like
we should not have been reading American Flag.
Yeah, no, we should not have been reading American Flag.
But I mean, sure. And I love Watchmen. I mean, it's a pinnacle of comics in a lot of ways to me. But I feel like for so many years, superhero comics have been like teenage angst and dream fulfillment for teenagers, and then it became a reaction to that by creators that grew up on those comics but were sort of ashamed by those comics, and you know what I mean, and as we all were to some. We talked about that earlier, like there was a little bit of shame involved with reading comics, but so they started going super dark and thinking that is adult. But I think you've done this thing where it's like you still are able to have this wonderful joy and fun with superhero comics because they're silly if you think about them too hard, and they should be fun and full of adventure and action. But you also weave in these really wonderful stories about how people deal with everyday life, how Batman deals with having a kid, or how getting married and having this changes life, or how Mr. Miracle doesn't know about his own existence, and what can he escape from the drudgery of sort of his average life. And it's like you don't see that much in superhero comics, and I think you do that really a lot better than I've seen it done before. As much as I love Watchmen is still Alan's sort of way of getting rid of his shame. And you know what I mean?
It's a good way to put it. Yeah, there is still that.
I don't feel that with your work. I don't feel like you're doing it like because you want to write something only that you're proud of, which you should be proud, but I feel like you're truly creating something new in some of these books where it's like, these are really adult written books. These are actually adult issues that these characters are dealing with on a really deep level. And I just think it's great. And I wonder, was that something that just came naturally to you, or was that an intent that you were like, I want to, evolve this medium?
I think I came to it. I mean, because I remember jumping back in 2006 with you guys, and people sending me books, and it seemed like that's what everyone was doing. Like when I read Bendis's Daredevil or Brubaker's Cap, or Rucka's what was the one with the guy gets Blue Beetle. Sorry.
Yeah. Yep. Infinite Crisis.
Infinite Crisis. Jeff was not kind of that school. Jeff is almost old. Jeff Johns is almost old school.
Sure.
Yeah, he was a bridge writer in a lot of ways.
Yeah, bridge writer. But sort of that generation, Brad Meltzer, Jason Aaron Fraction kind of brought up the rear, and I feel like I'm the last one. And just because I went to war I had 8 years of my life that I had to catch up a little bit. But I'm like their same age.
Yeah.
And so I felt like that was already here. So I was like, oh, this is what like JMS did when he took, Supreme, like that kind of stuff. But he was
right.
People forget what JMS was really huge when I was getting into comics.
JMS was doing Midnight Nation.
Yeah, Midnight Nation.
Geez, great fucking book.
Who was the artist? Was that like Gary Frank?
It was Gary Frank.
Wow,
yeah.
That's my guy.
Love that.
Yeah, I read the shit out of that. And so, yeah, I mean, I feel like like they had already paved the way. So I'm just kind of trying to, and that really appealed to me. Like I loved it. I ate it up. I still eat that stuff up. I still think it's wonderful. So
the early 2000s were an amazing time for comics.
Yeah. I'm always depressed because all those guys had almost the same career cycle where they got so big, then they went to Image, and then they got sucked in by Hollywood. And I just felt like it robbed comics of so much goodness. Like Hollywood just.
We were talking about that
writing movies, and now you're writing movies. So you're doing the exact same thing, Tom. You're going to leave us behind.
But you're not writing.
I'm aware. I am.
But you're not writing comics to become films or series.
Well, I don't think those guys were either. I mean, Brubaker was a guy that loved comics and still loves comics. And I think,
yeah, I think some of them were definitely writing screenplays.
That Hollywood cash comes, in the door, and forget it. Comics can kiss my ass. That's
But it's funny because, like,
way to go, Guggenheim. Jerk.
I feel like nobody goes to Frank Miller's table being like, man, I love RoboCop 3, dude. Can you sign this for me? It's like you can only. I mean, Kirkman did it, right? Kirkman did the thing where he's now more famous as a TV person than a comic book person.
Yeah, but he still writes comics.
But it's very, like, usually the lifelong satisfaction comes from being in this community and in this medium. Like, and to me, it's much more fun to write a comic than to write a screenplay. And it's so I never want to sort of lose sight of that. And it literally legitimately pisses me off. And I think it really affected sales that we sort of lost the cream of our crop to Hollywood. So, I mean, and it has to do with, the new streaming service. There's such a call for writers now in Hollywood.
Well, what I've seen over the last, 10, 15 years is that there's a natural migration of talent, and there always should be. It's almost like a sports team. It's like, I love the 2004 St. Louis Cardinals.
That's true.
But those guys shouldn't be playing in 2020. And, it's and comics are almost that same way. And it's a brutal fucking industry. And it's like you have this transition of talent, and that's just kind of how I think it's how a lot of the publishers, view it, that there's young guys coming up, and this guy has kind of had his or this gal is. Well, is it also they're going out?
Is it also a financial thing? It's like, I can pay this guy coming up that doesn't know any better, nothing.
That's right.
Sure, every baseball team does that.
Yeah. So whereas Tom King, he's going to cost me a fucking arm and a leg to
understand. Tom,
right.
Tom, it's like every.
I got a 4-ounce fucking heart.
This next contract you sign is your big money deal, baby.
That's the big one. Next one.
Last big one.
That's the last one. No, but being a comic book artist and writer, you have to evolve, but not evolve too much. It's a hard balance because you want to be like the Beatles, right? The Beatles can't, be doing Meet the Beatles for 8 years. Nobody's going to remember them. Each album has to be. But if they get too far away from what they do well, then it's shit. Like, if I do my next comic is like, man, this is going to be, I'm going to take mushrooms and it's just going to be fucking me doing acid wash comics. Like, nobody's going to read that. Like, I have to somehow.
Vince B will.
Yeah, Vince B. Yeah, I guess I got Vince. But for my next 3 projects, I was like, okay, I gotta get away from it. They're not about anxiety. They're
you don't want to be the Beatles. You want to be Springsteen, baby.
Yeah, you want to be.
You want to span fucking decades.
You want to, yeah. That's what you have to evolve in the right way. You have to keep challenging yourself. That's why you asked me about 12 issue series. And on the one hand, I'm like, yes, I love working. I couldn't be more happier with the current projects I'm working on. But then I was like, but I can't just write 3 12-issue series for the rest of my life. I'll get stale. Yeah. If I write 70 of them, one of them will be the 70th worst 12-issue series, So, like, you have to, you have to keep finding new challenges in this medium.
You're kind of similar to, like, Ennis. Like, Ennis writes a lot of great, like 6 and 12-issue series, but then he's got those, like, 60 80-issue runs that he's done, and so he's shown that he can do small segment stories and then big arcing sagas. And I think that you got to aspire to that, but a lot of that's already.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, and everything's balanced because I'd love to curve a Neil Gaiman or an Alan Moore, but you kind of just dip in and do the best comics ever and then dip out. But I also like getting a paycheck, so
well, there's
At the end of the day, I mean, it still goes back to me reading the pedophiles book, man. It's just like
it all started with a pedophiles book.
It all did start with
the legacy of Tom King. It's just
if you ever see him, punch him in the face. But I work. I write to what is it? I do the opposite. I write to earn money. I don't earn money to write.
But you also write what you also and I keep seeing that in your books. Mr. Miracle was very much a war book. As I read it, I just watched 1917. Have you seen that yet?
No, I have not seen it. I want to see it. I know the one shot. Yeah, everyone says
don't watch it with the kids.
All right, I'll keep with kids.
And as I knew that we were going to talk to you this week, and I watched it here over whatever the fucking weekend is. I lose track of fucking days now, but
I'll be ready.
Deadline's on Friday, Chris. Deadline's on Friday.
And so I'm rereading some of the Miracle stuff in 1917. In 1917, it's an amazing movie. I think that you will love it. It's not one that you walk away from going, "Hey, let's go sing a happy song." It is absolutely about the horror and devastation and mindless destruction of war. And I see that in your. I don't think that you're a big fan of war. That's my takeaway.
I think you're right. I'm not a big fan. Is there anybody who's a big? I guess yes. There are people who have not been in it who are huge.
There are lots of people that are big fans in theory of war and have that. Yes, put me in, coach.
Arms dealers are big fans.
They're a bunch of fucking assholes on the Wisconsin state capitol with their bang bang pow pow penis toys, which I think
here we go. It's the political rant time of the show. Hold on, let me get the music ready for that
rant. It's time for Chris's political rant.
Ready to go.
You've been there, and you can't walk away from one of your comics and say, "Wow, war is fun."
It was, but I feel like honestly, like you know what it's like living today, where you have this incredible anxiety that every time you leave your house you might die. Like that's war. Like, do you want to live in this? It fucking sucks. Like now I feel like we can finally relate to it.
Yeah.
Do you guys really feel that way?
Scrub down coming home from the grocery store today.
The other day I was in, my grandfather was in World War II, and he would never talk about it. Not a single word. You could ask
Europe or Pacific.
Pacific. He's one of the Pacific. Europe people usually talk. Pacific people
Mine
don't.
too.
Yeah. But because it was fucked up, and I never kind of understood, even having gone off and done what I did, because I don't mind telling a story here and there. My grandpa wouldn't talk about it at all. And the other day I was taking a shower and I was thinking about this time, and I was like, what stories am I going to create about this time, just as a storyteller? And I was like, I don't want to create any stories about this time, this coronavirus time. I don't want to read stories about this coronavirus time. I want to put it in a fucking memory box and send it off to sea. This is what it's really like. War is shitty and boring and fucking terrible, and people die. And there's glory into it. And the people who fight it are fucking heroes. Don't get me wrong about that. I'm impressed by the people who do it. I'm not impressed by the actual event.
That's a fantastic way to put that.
Do you think we're going to see a big change in what people are going to want to consume after this? Like, are we going to just want, a lot of fantasy, a lot of, sort of, I'm trying to think of like a different period of time, like where we could, because obviously like the 70s cinema was a reaction to, the 60s sort of free love, hippie kind of movement. And I'm wondering, like, are we going to see that same kind of thing where people are not going to want to, like you said, who wants to write about this situation, but we're all going through it. Are we just going to want?
I think you're going to see stories about connection coming out of this, because I think people are going to be starved for connection with other people. That's what I feel.
I mean, to me, I keep going back to 1918. Like, we've actually done this once, right? Yeah. And like 1918 was even worse than it is now. Like, globally, 100 million people died, and it hit young people. And like this, the only blessing is our kids are safe, right? And then what followed 1918? The fucking Roaring 20s, right? It was a party for 10 years.
Well, it was also coming out of fucking World War I.
Yeah, but it was also, and what's interesting about that is I was talking to my college roommate became a historian. And so we were talking about this, and he's like, it's interesting looking back on that, because there aren't really great novels and movies and stuff about the 1918 pandemic. Although it hit just as hard as this, people never made great art about it. You'll find 30 huge books about World War I and then the deep thing. But even though the pandemic killed more people, you're not going to find 30 great novels about it.
Do you know who David Brooks is?
The New York Times columnist?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
So David Brooks is on a PBS mini roundtable, and he's talking about how he's read a lot of. He's catching up on pandemics. He said, "I'm reading up about the 1918 pandemic, the Spanish flu, which shouldn't have been called the Spanish flu because it started in fucking Kansas." That's not what he said.
Those are my people. They were maligned.
So there's a lot of historical about it, but not a lot of on the ground history of it. And he said what he found out is that people didn't record what happened during the Spanish flu pandemic because they were fucking ashamed of how they acted during it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be, I think we're going to sort of talk around it almost. Like, I don't think how we... Do you remember when, I don't know, I mean, how are we going to comprehend this time? We'll never be able to comprehend. Remember when that tidal wave hit Indonesia and 100,000 people died, and we're like, if that happened in America, it would change the world forever. I was like, it's happening right now. How is this? Yeah. Like, how, I don't know. It's funny because I'm working on stuff now that'll be published, God willing, on the end of this. And even I don't know how to write scenes. Like, do I write scenes where people are all wearing masks and hands? Like how do you, or do you just ignore it and hope that everything returns to normal? Like,
let Mitch decide.
Let Mitch decide if everyone has a mask on.
That is a good thing. That is like, well, I mean, I guess we're all hoping like at some point we figure out a way to return to some sort of normalcy. And
there's no fucking normal. There's not a fucking normal since like 1998. Would stop fucking seriously. There hasn't been a normal since 1998.
Well, just because that's the last time you were comfortable, that doesn't mean it was the last time it was normal.
That's when Chris discovered beer. 98.
Since I was a sophomore in high school.
What are you talking about? Like. That's just an old man talking about.
There's no such thing as normal. Everything is always changing.
But normal relative to what we know is all I'm saying. Like, are things going to
for what 2 years?
Well, we weren't wearing masks and gloves to go.
Donald Trump was the goddamn president. That's not fucking normal.
Relax. There.
This is an NPR. There is no normal. Everything is upside down. Black is white. Red is blue. It doesn't matter.
Oh my God.
Dogs and cats living together.
Here we go.
The Germans are bombing Pearl Harbor.
Are you done? Are you done with your diatribe?
There is no fucking normal. There is no normal.
Will we return to normal? Yes. We will return to normal. I agree.
Yeah, I think to some sort of normalcy. I don't think it's going to be, hopefully we learn something from all this insane. I'll be honest with you. Like, you said something and I want to know, like, do you truly fear going outside right now? Do you truly fear going like to the grocery store? Or, I mean, do you fear for your life right now? Cause I don't feel that sort of anxiety. I'll be honest. Like, this hasn't been that big of a change for me at this point, which is kind of weird, but like
Sal doesn't like people, but you have to understand it. This is like Sal's wet dream.
Me holed up in my house
away for 2 months and not have to talk to anyone.
Let me
how old are your kids now, Sal?
Well, I was just going to say, like, one of the bright sides of this is my daughter is 17. She's graduating from high school. She's going to college in the fall. And like, typically, and now we're pretty lucky. My daughter is she likes to be around us still. She never, you know what I mean? Like, she didn't go through,
I understand,
like, your typical 17-year-old teenage kind of thing. I mean, we've had issues, that kind of stuff, like any other family, but I feel almost like the other day we're all here and we've always spent a lot of time together, me and my kids and my wife, the four of us. We've always been together a lot, and whether it was family vacations, going camping, whatever it is. And the other day, like, we were all here, and as we've been for fucking weeks, but there was just this moment, like, I was helping my son with his homework, and my wife and my daughter were in the kitchen. My wife was helping my daughter. She was teaching her how to cut a pineapple. Nothing, no brain surgery, nothing. But it was just like, and I kind of forgot about all the craziness in the world. And it was just this moment of like, oh yeah, it's just the four of us again, sort of hanging out and doing normal things. And it's simple. And it was a really nice little moment in time. And so for me, it's like, I'm hanging out with my kids more, and and me and my wife get along great. And I'm trying to find sort of good things about this time. I mean, I guess part of it is like, I don't pay attention to the news at all, because when I do,
that's smart.
Because it's just like,
it doesn't add to your.
No, that is what adds to my anxiety, is just everyone sort of losing their fucking minds about having to be at home right now. And it's like, come on, this could be a lot worse than what it is. It's not, this isn't
it
like,
could be a lot worse.
Yeah. I understand there's terrible things happening. People are dying, and it's bad, but I mean, for a lot of us, it could be way worse than this. And for a lot of people in the world, it's way worse than this every fucking day.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so it's like,
true.
I don't know. I'm sitting here talking to, two of my friends about comic books in a night and having a couple of beers. It could be a lot fucking worse. You know what I mean? Like, so I just try and take that into account. So it's like, when you said that, I'm like, really? Are you like feeling that anxiety every day of like, I don't want to go outside because you're afraid of dying? It's like, man, that seems pretty extreme to me. And I hope you don't feel.
Well, he's also in DC.
True. Yeah.
So that's a goddamn war zone anyway.
Yeah. I mean, so it's a few things. Number one, I live in downtown DC. I live in a townhouse. My wall is shared with another person's wall, and
right.
And so I live in the middle of a city as opposed to a suburb, or it's like we're all
we all live in metropolitan or metropolitan adjacent areas.
Yeah.
You're probably the most populous because Sal's out in fucking Villa Park, which is like Chicago.
Giving out my address, man.
Yeah, my stalking begins.
Like 80,000 fucking people in Villa Park. I'm sorry if they hunt you down, you fucking paranoid jerk.
This guy cross off.
I live on 72nd Street in Milwaukee.
Sure, like I believe that with your St. Louis hat. The whole thing's a fucking lie.
Marta just heard that, and she's going to come down and be like, pull the goddamn plug, motherfucker.
Knock it off.
But we all live, so yeah, it's tangible. I walk out I got a grocery store, 100 yard from my backyard, and I go there, and yeah, everyone's wearing face masks.
I'm not saying it's not weird, but I mean, I go to the grocery store, and it's not like I'm thinking, holy shit, even if I get sick, I'm like, I'm not gonna fucking die from this. There's no fucking way I'm dying from this.
No, I mean, yeah, and that's that. Yeah, but yeah, it's still scary. But back to your original point, it's like, yeah, whenever we come out of this, I don't know if I want Tom King writing a fucking pandemic comic.
No, man, he doesn't want to write one. I'll tell you that much.
But
I do want to write. It's funny you say, like, I don't want to write directly about this. I never wanted to write directly about Trump with Mr. Miracle. I don't want to. You can't. But I do want to write about sort of the forces at play here, the paranoia and the fear and all that. I do want to write about the bigger things, but not directly about this.
It's funny. Right. We had Tim on last week, and we're like, yeah. So you're gonna write about this? And he's like, have you not read fucking Revival?
Oh, that's true.
It's like, yeah, it's like 60s, guys.
Do you have any plans to write anything outside of DC or Big Two? Any more Image or creator-owned stuff? Image
stopped paying its creators, so I think I'm going to stay away from them for a second.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh.
Is that a recent development, or is that
that can't possibly be secret, is it?
No, that started in 2004.
We don't.
No, I mean, it's not their fault. Diamond can't pay Image, so Image can't pay their creators.
Oh, you're saying
that's current. That's a current sort of situation.
Well, I'm saying at some point in time,
as you return to the normalcy that Chris says we'll never get to.
No, I didn't say that it will. I said things haven't been normal for a long fucking time. Just wrap your head around that. There's always
wrap my head around a statement that means nothing.
Yes.
Okay. I'll wrap my head around it.
I would.
The sooner you understand that we're an old fucking married couple,
and you're in between.
That for literally 15 years, guys.
We only bring
on the inside. That's why I didn't like Scotty. I was like, stop cheating. Go back to your husband.
We only bring on guests to mediate our disagreements.
Yeah.
You're our counselor, Tom.
Yeah.
I remember. I'm sorry. I only know you as yourself.
You're the third person that we bring in to keep things interesting.
I remember you guys getting in fights over pen models on the podcast.
Pen models.
But didn't you guys design pens or something? Wasn't that am I imagining this? Oh, maybe
I don't remember that.
Wasn't your day job back in the day or something?
I worked for Sanford.
Oh, Mark, yeah.
Yeah.
See, Sharpies. I was like, holy shit, I've gone insane.
The old Sharpie 3000.
Yeah, wow. I remember you talking about that.
Yeah, it's a classic. Everybody loves it. I got one right here. Tom,
some Sharpies.
Tom, I designed this barrel graphic right here.
This is what I have to do.
My home to yours, brother. My home to yours.
All I can say is,
have you ever used the Expo Blue dry erase marker? Yeah.
Damn.
All I can say is Chris is no big Barda. That's all I'm gonna say.
Oh man. God damn. I'm assuming that was a penis comment. That was cool.
Mm-hmm. No, I meant he doesn't. I don't know. I don't know what I meant. I have no idea what I meant with that. It doesn't matter.
Mr. Scott Confrio.
So when you hear, going back to Dark Side is, because we didn't talk about that enough.
Oh boy.
When you hear it, like, because one of the interesting things about you using that is I kept thinking, like, how am I supposed to say it in my head? Is it Dark Side is? Is it Dark Side is? Is it like ominous Dark Side? You know what I mean? Like,
Dark Side is.
Is it sort of like,
you have to think of it Dark Side Lytle.
You guys, it's Dark Seed. I don't know why you guys are all fucking this up.
Dark Seed.
Oh Jesus.
Dark Seed.
Oh, you're wondering.
No, even for A, it sounds like an A. It's a Dark Side.
Dark Side.
It's Dark Side.
It's Dark Side.
Dark Side.
Dark Side is.
We'll find out in the movie.
Oh, so that a little. We haven't even talked about that. Yeah, you're right.
It's Dark Side.
Dark
Side.
Who's playing
Dark
Side?
Who's playing? I'm going to announce it here, guys.
We thought maybe we could.
These are frescas, but they're full of vodka. The movie has not been cast. I don't know anybody who's playing anybody. As far as I know.
Enjoying that experience? I know you can't really talk about the movie at all, but for people that may not know, you're co-writing, or how is that?
Co-writing.
Co-writing what?
The New Gods movie.
The New Gods? They're making a movie of New Gods.
They are.
That's a bold move.
So I'm trying to, well, it hasn't been made yet, so who the fuck knows? Nothing in Hollywood turns real. That's my lesson in life.
Who knows? This could all go to shit.
No. But I will write it as best I can. That's my goal.
Yeah, we had James Robinson on the show once talking about League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah. I'm sure he has only happy memories of that experience.
Only happy memories. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, well,
I'm not saying this could mar your career for decades.
Good. I'm glad I'll be remembered forever.
Tell us a little bit about your co-writer on the New Gods movie. I'm not familiar with her really, so if you could, tell me.
Ava DuVernay is one of just the hottest directors in Hollywood. She made the miniseries about the Central Park Five, who are called what's the new name for them? Anyways, but yeah, she's utterly brilliant, and she's not a super nerd, but she's a huge Big Barda stan. That's like her person. So
really,
yeah, she loves Big Barda. So that's sort of how she found her way into this project, and she reached out to me through Twitter and said, I want to sort of consult with you. And Julian and I together flew out there, and we talked about it for a long time. And then she called me and asked me to co-write the movie with her. And she's brilliant, and she's a fantastic writer, and it's going well. It's going to be all pablum, guys. Movie shit just turns into pablum. You get like official fucking PR shit.
Sure. No.
Ask me about the end of the deal. It'll be much more fun because you got.
Are you enjoying
movie stuff is going to just be like.
Are you enjoying the process?
Not. Yes, I mean in that like it's fun to hang out with movie stars. And
what movie stars?
No, but it's fun to like they invited me on the I grew up on the Warner Brothers lot, right? And my mother wanted me to have nothing to do. She's passed now, but she wanted me to have nothing to do with movie industry because she thought it was all just bullshit.
And here you are.
And here I am. So it was really it was surreal and very nice to be sort of like, Tom, come back, and to go up to the Warner Brothers lot to where I used to have lunch with my mother sometimes, and to go into that world and be invited there on my own terms. And meet with the people who are doing the entire DC universe and be like, this is what we're going to do. And this is what the Batman movie is. And participate in that conversation, and to be like, because we've all said this as nerds, like the people who make comic books should be in that room. So I was like, thank fucking God they finally invited one of us. So I could talk. One of the reasons the Marvel movies are so good is because they made the brain trust from the very beginning. Yeah. And they let the comic book people into the room.
Yeah.
So that has been super exciting, and working on the movies. I still enjoy writing comics more than I enjoy writing television and movies. Just in terms of if I'm looking forward to my week and I have a comic book to write or a movie to write, a comic book week is a more fun week.
Okay.
I will say, yeah, it's just because when I write a comic book, I know what it's going to look like at the end.
Yeah.
I know, when I write,
Sure.
Flash, Catwoman.
You're much closer to the control point of it, and at this point, Can you tell your editor to fuck off? You have a good relationship with your editor? You're like, no, I'm not some.
Go ahead and tell him. Just tell him
anymore.
now. Just throw it out there. Fuck off, whoever your editor is.
Not fuck off, but no, I strongly disagree with you, and this is how it needs to be.
I edited, all my projects are edited by Jamie Rich, who's the best editor in comics.
Okay.
And we have a good relationship. He basically has... he reads my scripts and lets them go, but every two or every three he'll be like, Tom, swing and a miss, this one didn't do it for me. And you need a friend who will say that to you, because you can get too high on your own supply and be like, no, I'm perfect, just fucking, they need to say Bat and Cat 17 more times and people will love it, let's fucking kill Wally West. You can do all sorts of things that sort of just your arrogance lead you to bad places. So he's really good at slapping me in the face. The other day I was just talking to him the other day, and I was like, I'm reading these comics by some of the people I love who they only reference their own comics in their comics, almost like they've made their own continuity world where they've decided the things I write are good, and therefore I will only reference those things. I was like, if I ever happens to me, just slap me through the phone.
This is very much an outsider's perspective looking in. Is that there was a time through Marvel and DC, it seemed like there were a lot of like 20-somethings just out of college editors that really didn't kind of know their ass from a hole in the ground. But then there were some Vertigo editors that were incredibly dialed in and very well respected, and of course for the Dark Horse editors. Has the editor game changed at all? Do you see any like evening out where there are respected editors across the board, or do you see that in different publishers, and you don't have to name them, obviously, that still haven't gotten that?
Well, I think DC had some problems because they moved. Comics have traditionally been made in New York, and I think and I think that has been to the benefit of them. In the fact that like if you loved comic books, like comic book people generally went to that city. DC picked up what 2011, 12, 13 around then, and moved to LA after 75 years or something. And I think that was a tough transition. They lost a lot of editors who were just in it for the comics, who stayed in New York. And they probably gained some people who are more like, oh, I need a job in entertainment. Comic books are hiring. Fine, I'll get that, and then I'll get my PA job afterwards. And I do think that has been a transition time for DC. And I do think they've come sort of through that time and hired the right people who really, because you have to, I mean, there are different stages of comic book. Like so I was talking about Jamie Rich, my editor. He's one of the few people, he wrote comic books. He used to have Owning Press. He edited Powers. And he edited Queen and Country.
That's where
I knew the name.
Yeah. And he was also a writer. He wrote some. He with Joel Jones. He did a bunch of series, and so he comes from that. A lot of the editors have never written. So unlike in the past when your editors were Marv Wolfman, Len Wein, Jim Shooter, like we were talking about, who has the craziest comic book life of all time. But like, so I think, I think they're getting through that transition period where they're now finding their feet of finding the people who love comic books to be the editors of the comic books, which I think is good. It's hard. It's hard to make comics. Some people can do it, but it's very rare if you don't come up in comics. If you don't love this medium.
That can be incestual too. I think sometimes
I agree.
It can go the other direction where people love comics a little too much. I think we lost Chris somehow. I'm not sure what happened. He disappeared, but oh well, whatever. We don't need him, Tom. It's me and you now, buddy.
It's me. What happened to Chris?
I don't know. He just disappeared. I'm not sure what happened. I don't
Will he dial back in?
Well, I'm sure he will. But
good. Finally, now we can talk shit about Chris. What the fuck is up with that guy?
He's been the bane of my existence since the beginning.
I'm sorry you have to deal with it. I have utter sympathy for you, man.
It's we have a very I don't know, sort of odd couple thing, but we love each other.
Great chemistry, man. Since the very beginning, I'm telling you. Do you remember your original formats? I feel like I could tell them. First, you would do comic news, and then you would do.
Top
How
of the
did you find that? And then you would do do you have you had a pick of the week of somehow, or you each did a pick of the week? We had top of the stack. That's what it was.
I got the. Here we go.
Oh God! Oh man! Oh man! Flashbacks.
I still get people, and then we brought on Future Stacks,
Future Stacks. Yes.
Remember that? And people still ask us about, and that was like a joke. Like we did that as a joke of how could we recommend books that haven't even come out yet? Like it was sort of, we were just like, we're gonna get ahead of the game, and we're gonna, it's Future Stacks. But people still ask us about that stuff. Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. Chris was really the driving force. I mean, it was such a weird happenstance of putting this whole thing together. And, Chris was sort of the driving force of organization. You know, I was just like, whatever, wing it. Put a microphone in front of me and I'll talk for 3 hours. I don't care. I'm just waiting for somebody to put a microphone in front of me, you know? And he was really, kind of like, okay, let's structure it. Let's do it this way. But then at the same time, and I've told this story before, but like I grew up listening to a lot of talk radio in Chicago. There was some like really great talk radio guys when I was young, like Stephen Gary and Jonathan Brandmeier and different guys like that I loved, and I listened to a lot of it. So I sort of had that in my head from the beginning of like, okay, well, this is just, and then Howard Stern obviously was another, sort of guy that I listened to. And so it was just like, well, let's just do that. Let's just do that. But let's just talk about comics because it's something we like. But more often than not, we would get off of the subject of comics and just sort of ramble about whatever, and people seem to like that more than sometimes me. I was the worst. Like Chris and Tom even though I had read comics longer than either one of them, I have the worst memory. Like
I'm the same way. I feel that's how I feel.
I don't have one of those memories where I'm like, oh, that story and this guy wrote that, and I have no idea. You know what I mean? Like I can't produce those kind of factoids in my head. So those guys were really good at that. And like you always talked about like when we do the Comics 101, you like those a lot.
Yes. Like I still remember Justice Society and Flash.
But those were like, it was like doing a book report. You know what I mean? Like I'd have to go back and like research all this shit, to try and put together a report of like, okay, this is the entire history of this fucking book. Cause I didn't know it, but
that was before you could just go on Comic Vine and just read it out loud.
Yeah, right. Exactly. No, who wants to hear that? I know. So what was it like going on, the Seth Meyers show? And how many times have you been on there now? You've been on there a couple, right?
No, just once.
Oh, it was just the once? Okay.
How dare they? They'll never ask me back because I totally screwed it up.
Oh, Christmas Niesman has entered. Should I admit him or should I put him in the waiting room and just let him?
If we can't get Scotty, let's get Chris. Like that.
Wow. I'm gonna get a text from Scotty. I'm surprised my phone at this point has not blown up. No, nothing. That
was the first podcast that made me cry when you guys did the Ringo episode. Do you remember that after he died?
Oh yeah.
Scotty and Mike Norton, and
he was very close.
I'm back.
There he is. What happened? Where'd you go, buddy?
A little technical difficulties.
Oh, you got drunk and fell down, didn't you?
No, I
tripped.
Had to get a book and I hit a cable.
Professional.
Oh my God, having a dream
all the time.
It's okay, Pop. It's okay.
Aw,
you get that
your
squirrel.
baby.
You get that squirrel. she's going hard after it. She's doing all.
There's mine.
I had to take my dog to the vet today.
There she is. Look at her.
Oh,
she's cute.
Aww.
I had to take one of my dogs to the vet.
She is sleeping,
which was a weird experience because they just met me in the parking lot. It was like a drug deal for dog.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was. They just came out to my car. I called them and I'm like, I'm here, and they came out to my car and took my dog and.
Wait, who took your dog? What?
My vet. I had to take Bella to the vet today.
Oh, okay.
She's got an allergy thing, so I go to the vet and I drive there and they're like, just call us when you get here. So I'm in the parking lot and I call them and they come out and get her and took her in and then brought her back. Here's her
Tom,
medicine.
have you ever heard the story of Zeus? His dog Zeus?
My dog Zeus?
No, I've never.
His dog Zeus.
The mythological story, yeah, Thunderbolts.
his dog Zeus is like a super dog. Got shot by a cop.
What? Your dog got shot by a cop? What did the dog do? What did the cop do? Everyone should be arrested.
He was chasing a mailman, and he's a
American Bulldog,
pit bull kind of looking, but bigger.
Yeah.
And I guess he was chasing a mailman, and the cop saw it and shot him. So
that was the cop's reaction to shoot the dog.
And so he got put into the.
And he survived?
He survived.
Yes.
Yeah. And then he was at like the Chicago Animal Control Center. They patched him up.
My wife.
He was shot twice.
Dog.
9 millimeters. He's gangster.
Shot twice.
Yeah. Still has the scars. You can see him. But he went to the Chicago Animal Control. They patched him up. He healed up. And then after that, they put him out on like the floor to get adopted. And he got attacked by another dog. And that dog like ripped up his paw. So they took him off the floor. And I guess they have a rule once he's on the floor, or once they take him off the floor, they can't put him back.
Okay.
So then he got taken by this rescue. And then Marta, Chris's wife.
My wife.
And we had just lost we had 2 dogs, 2 pit bulls for like 15 years each.
Yeah, my dog's part pit. She got some good pit in her.
Yeah. And we had just lost both of them. And then we were looking for another dog. And yeah, we met.
And Marta messages Kim. It's like, you need this dog. And Sal is just like, no, I'm fucking done. I do not want, I want more fucking dogs. And Kim kind of muscled you into it.
Nah,
and he's like the best dog ever.
She would not say that. I was actually the one that was like, okay, it's a little quiet around the house. Maybe we could think about a dog. And
so you're the big softy is what it is.
Well, I just like having dogs here because I know nobody's coming into my house without me knowing it. You know?
Yeah.
So,
100%.
Yeah.
And I don't need them to like protect the house, but just wake me up and I'll do the dirty work.
So Tom, what's it like in DC? I've always I know people that live in Baltimore and live in the outskirts. What's living in DC? It seems like a really oddball town.
It's an oddball. Well, I grew up in LA and I went to school in New York and then came to DC. So DC just felt small to me at first because you can walk one end of DC to the other.
Sure.
But yeah, it's been a little crazier lately. I live about 3 blocks from the Capitol. I walk my dog around the Capitol every day. I post pictures on Twitter.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, because it's a beautiful, the public space, the mall, and all the museums are free. And I mean, I love it here because, at least this used to be true when I first got here. People generally come to DC because they have some desire to save the world. Like, people come to LA because they want to be famous. People go to New York because they want to be rich. People come to DC because they want to help. And I mean, half of that is an ego trip. So I think you deal with sort of that thing. But there is sort of this general spirit of people trying to sort of help the world here, which I enjoy. But I don't know if we truly. My wife is a lobbyist, lawyer kind of person, so I'm kind of on the edge of that DC culture. So
do you go to like parties and she's just like, yeah, I'm lobbying for, like save the world. And you're like, yeah, I write Batman.
It's funny because, everybody here is a lawyer or some sort of, government employee. And I was like, yeah, I write Batman. And then suddenly people, that's because it's like something that finally you can ask questions about because they're tired of talking to their deep.
I bet.
They're like, do you draw the pictures? The same questions they ask every single word.
Then you say, I write Mr. Miracle. And they're like, who's that?
It was, that was nice. It was nice to be on Batman. That was honestly besides the money, God bless the money, but the number one thing working on Batman is it just made your life normal because you could tell people like, oh, what do you feel? I write Batman. And people are like, what Batman? You're like, oh, just the Batman. You read the Batman, the one Batman book? It's like the one job.
The Batman.
No exists. Now I tell people, what do you write? I write, Strange Adventures. They'll be like, what the fuck is that? You don't really have a job. What do you do during the day? You do Sharpies? Is that what you do? You do Sharpies? Like that's so it's harder now. So I tell people,
I write Batman. That's what I tell them.
Good.
It's just easier.
It is easier.
I write Batman. They can't check. Yeah. They're not going to go to a comic book store and look.
Yeah. It's like, get on like Elf Quest.
Can I ask?
Offer on Ubers if you're in an Uber and it's like, what do you do for a living? I write comic books. Oh, what do you? Oh, Batman. Oh, I've heard of you. But you're like, oh shit, he has my address and he's heard of me.
Did you? Are you the one that killed Alfred?
You're the one that killed him? What the fuck happened with that wedding? Alfred? What happened with that wedding, buddy?
Hey, speaking of Alfred, have you watched Pennyworth?
I have not watched
on the E-Pix.
Is it good? Should I catch up with it? Is it good?
It's good.
It's really fucking good.
It's really
dude.
good.
All right. I'm into it.
I want you to write a Pennyworth comic.
Okay.
as penance. You have to write it as penance.
But he's dead now.
Next,
you can go back and it's comics. No one's ever dead, and you can write from any time point. Yes, watch Pennyworth. It's awesome, and I want you to write a Pennyworth comic.
How much shit did you get for that? Was it
No shit.
None?
That was so weird.
Really?
That was very. When the wedding came out, so much shit for the wedding. Still getting shit for the wedding to this day.
For the wedding,
the wedding that didn't happen.
That never was.
That was the worst one. Like I still get people mad at me.
People love a wedding. I mean,
when we killed off all those D-list superheroes in Heroes in Crisis, people were like pissed that I, oh, you narc! No, he was my favorite caveman from the middle aughts Teen Titans book. I
will never forget an interview we did with after he killed Stiltman, and he said, "You always have to be careful because anyone you kill is someone's favorite character."
Yeah, it's very, and God, when we revealed that Wally did not actually kill everybody, but accidentally his power came out and killed people. But the internet said Wally killed these people. That was a big deal. But when Alfred died, people were like, "Yeah, cool, about time." It was very
about time.
It was very much like it was.
It's because he's an immigrant.
It's funny, I talked to Snyder about the end. He did Death in the Family, and it teases the end that somebody's going to die in the very last issue, and nobody dies. And he said that's the most shit he's ever gotten in his career because people really were like bloodthirsty for death. And he's like, no, it's the death of the family. They're not a family unit. It's like, oh, fuck that. I want blood. I want someone
in a coffin.
You said death. I want death.
Where is the coffin?
So when Alfred died, it was mostly people were like, oh my God, where is this going to go? More than I fucking hate you, which was interesting.
Good. Yeah.
Well, I think it was very surprising to me. I mean, who knows if Alfred's going to stay dead? That's kind of. I mean, it doesn't.
I only say this.
I wouldn't think so.
No, I do say this seriously because of that and because of your experience. You should absolutely do a Pennyworth comic. And I got to shut the door because Marta's yelling.
Marta's yelling at him to shut up. Shut up, Tom King. That's good. I mean, yeah, I kind of assumed you would have gotten a lot for that, but I guess people. I
got more for Batman hitting Tim in the face. People were really mad about that.
What?
The little moment, yeah. I got more shit for. I mean, I've gotten shit for every single thing ever, but yeah,
that means you're doing it right.
Pennyworth wasn't one of the ones. Oddly enough,
you're doing
and
it.
he sold a shit ton of issues. So that's good too.
Hey, can I ask a couple of questions from your loving public? There's some people on YouTube that have asked some questions. Is that okay?
Of course, yeah.
All right.
And if you guys need to go, I can go too. I don't want to keep you guys. I know
I love how Tom. If I'm bothering you, I'll leave.
No. I have no. Same here. If you want to go, just let us know. Just give us a signal.
I'm at your disposal, man. I owe you, like I said, I owe you guys life debt. So whatever.
I'm gonna call a hard stop in 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll answer very quickly.
Well, I can stay with Tom. You don't need to. I can finish this show. All right. So Jay Park said, I met Mr. King at C2E2 this year. It was super cool. I wanted to thank him for being so kind. I'm aspiring to be a cartoonist, and I wanted to ask him for any writing advice or tips. So,
I usually say the same thing, so if I already said this to you, I apologize. Alan Moore wrote a book on how to write comics. That's an insane thing that actually happened, and you can buy it off of Amazon. Go buy the book. He literally this is how I'm the best writer who's ever written comics. Write comics.
Just do this.
It's told in simple language, and it's easy to follow. And any advice I could give you is going to be less than he could give you. It's like 30 pages. I read it, and I still think about shit I read in it when I write. So yeah, go out and buy that book, and it'll help you learn how to write.
Well, there you go. Greg McKeon said, hey guys, can Tom talk about the inspiration behind the Darkseid War Green Lantern special. How did that issue get put together? One of my favorite Tom King issues. So proud to own a page.
Oh, I own a page too, dude. Up there. The Doc Shaner. How did that issue come together? What was the inspiration? I love doing crossover events. I don't like writing them, like being the main person. I like when someone's like, hey, Tom, here's an issue you can do. I like being part of them better than being the leader of them. So Jeff, I picked, and Jeff said, he gave me the parameters, and it was like Green Lantern has to become a god at some point in the book, can become the god of light. And I think I originally
like an important plot point.
Yeah, important plot point. And then I was like, oh, well, if he becomes God at the end of it, that means he can undo whatever I do in the beginning of it. So that gave me the freedom to do whatever I wanted up until page 18. And then I looked at Doc's art, and I was like, man, this is just the most gorgeous art of all time. And so I just leaned into that. Yeah, I mean, the real inspiration for it was, as soon as I started writing, I'm a Star Trek guy. I love Star Trek. And I realized that Hal Jordan is Bill Shatner. They're the same character. He's Captain Kirk.
Oh.
Like,
really?
100%.
Oh, no.
Yeah, dude, he's he's the guy who looks at God and says, why does God need a starship? No. He just has no fear, man. He just wants to explore. He just wants the next thing.
I'm going to flip it. Say that Kirk is Hal Jordan.
Who came first? Hal Jordan or...
But it's... Yeah.
So boom. Boom, like Tom King. Take that.
Yeah.
Did Will Shatner ever sell insurance? I don't think so.
Door-to-door toy salesman.
Who had to dig deeper for it?
Do you know there was a DC comic about a guy who sold life insurance on other planets? And that's a character I really want to revive. I think that's the coolest concept of all time. So like every issue was like he'd go to a planet and be like, I have to sell you life insurance. Like, we're immortal gods. Why would we need life insurance? And that would be like the problem they would have to solve.
Yeah, I'm Ned. Needle-nosed Ned. Ned the head.
Hal Jordan is Chuck Yeager. Come on.
Hal Jordan is Chuck Yeager. Well, not the way I. So I write him as Captain Kirk. And that idea that he's the kind of guy who, if you asked him to be God, like every other, like Superman would be like, no, I can't take on the responsibility, you know. Hal Jordan's like, fuck yeah. Let me be God for a second. Have you ever read anything about Chuck Yeager? Of course I've never read Chuck. Yeah, I've read the right stuff. I guess I've read one.
Of course, God damn it, Sal.
Chuck Yeager is still alive, right? Chuck Yeager is still with us on this earth.
I believe he is, yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. Have you watched Discovery or Picard on CBS?
I have watched Picard. I have not. I watched the first season of Discovery.
Watch second season of Discovery because it's a bunch of the Christopher Pike stuff, and it's awesome. You will fucking love it.
Okay, all right. I'll check it out.
Pike, whenever he says that, guaranteed you're not going to like it.
Absolutely.
Whenever,
you will.
Yeah, no,
you will fucking.
Do you know how many things over the years?
I'm still mad at you for God and Country not being true C.I.A. So we'll see if this is your second.
Second season of Discovery. It's. You will fucking eat it up. You'll love it.
All right.
Although Pennyworth is really good.
Pike is your kind of character, dude.
Pennyworth and Pike. All right, I'm onto it. I'm into it.
Come on, catch up, Tom.
I'm sorry. I'm slacking.
Back to Seth Meyers.
I'm watching Ozark now. I'm doing like the rest of the world.
I'm behind. I get it good. Like it? Yes.
Third season is good.
All the kids seem to like it. SNL. So I figure it's got to be good.
Yeah, it's good. It's a nice little crime series. Takes me on the day. I don't mind.
Yeah. Discovery, season 2. You'll like it.
Jesus Christ, get off of it already.
I'm on. Jeez, I'll watch it right now on a fucking podcast. What do you want from me? Trying to play it cool. Where's my iPad? Fucking dial it up.
Put it on, goddammit.
Look at this. I got a goddamn Carmine Infantino book down here. Someone wrote a biography of him, and you took him into the goddamn stairwell.
Carmine.
We almost killed him.
You almost killed him.
It could have been our legacy.
I did. I felt bad. I was like, is it worth it? I'm like, it's always worth it, Tom.
It's always worth it.
It's about the show.
Jesus.
I was a little obsessive back then.
Was that the same show that we we had to try and get what's his name, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., the guy with the white hair.
Steranko, is that when I got snuck Steranko into the New York Comic Con?
Were you the guys who were in line with Steranko and they didn't know who he was? Was that you?
Yeah, that was us.
Oh,
I
man.
gave him my press badge to get in.
I was on iFanboy and I was like, remember that time you were in line with Steranko? They're like, that never happened. I was like,
you son of a bitch.
That was you guys, huh? I remember
You
that.
son of a bitch. That was us. That was me. I gave you my press badge.
I'm 40. I don't remember things.
I wish I was 40.
And so
I'm 41.
Steranko gets in and he turns around as he's walking through security with my press badge. And he's like, I owe you one. And Sal looks at me. He's like, you fucking cash that shit in.
Fucking A. That's Steranko. God damn it.
It's Steranko. I mean, he's crazy, but yeah.
Steranko tells a story. I've heard him tell it multiple times of his first day at Marvel, how he walked into Stan's office cold, didn't know anything or anyone, gave samples of his work, which was just like a few pictures. Stan Lee came out of the office, looked at the samples, brought him, he says this with a straight face, brought him back into the office and pointed to every single Marvel book and said, based on the samples you've given me, I'll give you any one of my books and kick the creative team off for you. That's
bullshit,
the story.
though.
He says that's how he broke it. He tells you this to your face. You're like, that cannot possibly be true.
Steranko.
The world does not work that way. That you give a few samples. I'm kicking Jack Kirby off a book. Some guy just sent me, give me a page.
It's so Steranko, but it's also so fucking Stan that it's fucking believable.
Maybe it's true. Who knows? I'm saying that's the story he gives.
I'm here to make the kids happy.
No fucking way.
Pick whatever book you want. We'll put you on it.
That's much more of a Steranko story than it is a Stan story.
Oh, it's absolutely more of a Steranko story. But you can see Stan being like, kid, whatever you want. Yeah, X-Men, nah, they suck. Spider-Man, it's yours.
Have you, Tom, in your meteoric rise as a superstar writer in comics?
I love how his question's going so far. I can only go downhill from here.
Have you had those moments yet where like a creator that, you know, a writer or an artist in comics that whose stuff you loved, like came up to you and you know, said something nice about your work which surprised you, or like, have you had that happen yet? Or I mean, I'm not bragging that people say it all the time, but I'm just very intimidated by a ton of people. I mean, I remember being at the Eisners, and you know, a guy came up to me, British dude, is like, I just want to say how much I love Mr. Miracle, and I was like, oh, that's cool. So he looked familiar. And then like my brain's like, that's Dave Gibbons talking to you right now. and you're like, oh,
freaky, isn't it?
And you're like, oh, but I stole it all from you. How can you like this thing? It's like,
well, that's why he likes it. That's
why he likes it.
Very familiar.
You know, it's like John Lennon going up to the Monkees and being like, man, I love that fucking song. You know,
Last Train to Clarksville.
Yeah, Last Train to Clarksville. You guys nailed it on that one.
Real catchy tune. It's upbeat. I like it.
So yeah, I mean, there's stuff like that. A lot of, you know, and people I worship, like, you know, I go to every year in Baltimore now. I have a lunch with the Simonsons, and then we bring. And we try to bring another guest or two. Like we brought Joe Giella, who, you know, he inked The Flash of Two Worlds. And so, but just seeing with the Simonsons, they were like the first comic book I ever wrote, Walt Simonson, read. Walt Simonson wrote it. Yeah, and Louise Simonson was my favorite writer when I was a kid on New Mutants and X Factor and all that stuff. And Power Pack.
They are
Power Pack.
They're
Loved
the
Power Pack.
Yeah, I've shown this before, but this is like I keep this up here as my idea. Like there's the Simonsons and me and Frank Miller. I was like, man, that's pretty cool. I got to that point where I'm in a picture.
That's kind of neat.
You've talked about that before, about like that's sort of your ideal how to live a life. You know, those people in that.
Yeah.
I try to like, what would Walt do? You know, because like I look at Walt's career, man. The dude made his mark. He goes to every con and he has a huge line. He's not charging. He's just doing it for fun. He's still doing art in his day. I mean, that's like, for a long time, if you were a young comic book writer, there was no people above you who were happy about their lives.
Very first comic ever bought.
Is this going to be every episode we're going to see this fucking comic book?
Walt Simonson cover, Dave Gibbons interiors.
Oh, wow, look at that. That's crazy.
He didn't buy that. He bought that he bought that 8 years ago at New York Comic Con. He pulled it out of a bin. I was there. Don't let him bullshit you, Tom.
You are an old couple. Yeah.
We are. Seth Meyers. You never told me. What was it like going on Seth Meyers?
What's the best?
It was good. It was, he or I fucked it up. So Clayman is still mad at me to this day. And I mean that in quite a literal way. So I was supposed to be on there to promote Heroes in Crisis. That was like my gig. That's why, not why I got the gig. I got the gig because Seth was a fan. He walked into a comic book store and asked if they knew me. And that guy contacted my con agent and got me on the show. But DC's like, okay, you're going on there, you're promoting something, you're promoting Heroes in Crisis. So he was supposed to ask me 3 questions, and you go over it ahead of time, like, do you have 3 funny stories or whatever? And first you go over it with the guy on the phone, and then you go over it with the producer, and then Seth comes in and you go over with him. So so the 3 questions, it was like, tell me a story about being in the CIA, tell me a story about being in comics, and what's up next. It was basically those 3 questions. Or no, are your kids into comics? And so I told the CIA story, I told the kids in the comic story, and I was waiting for him. And Clayman had flown out with his wife so he could make this big announcement. So I'm on stage with him, and he's like, and I'm telling the end of the kid story and whatever. I'm finally comfortable. I'm finally relaxed into it. People were laughing. He's like, "Great, well, thanks for being here." And I was like, "No, you didn't ask the whole reason I'm here." So I never said Heroes in Crisis on the show. And Clay is on the audience, and his wife and the DCPR come off, and these people are like they're all freaking out. They're like, "Oh, we told our bosses we were here to promote something. You didn't fucking promote it." I was like, "He never asked the question."
He asked me about my reading fucking comics.
Fucking Seth Meyers.
Well, they're gonna read my next project, which is Heroes in Crisis.
My one regret about that show is I should have taken a Xanax beforehand, because it took me like 5 minutes to get comfortable and start making jokes. I was super nervous when I got
I bet.
But yeah, he was really nice. He came back. My wife was there. He met my wife, and we did have that moment where he comes up to me and he's like, "Tom, I'm your biggest fan. Miracle Man is my favorite comic book. Like, I love Miracle Man so much." And I was like, "I guess we're just gonna have to call him Miracle Man from now on." Fuck Mr. I wasn't gonna correct him. I was like, Miracle Man, that's good.
I did that like 2 episodes ago. I was talking about your book. I'm like, the Miracle Man, and Chris and Tom are looking at me like, "What the fuck are you talking about? He didn't do a miracle." I'm like, Miracle Man. No.
We look at him like that a lot.
Well,
okay, that makes sense.
That's not.
You should have heard what he was saying about you off air, man. It was cool.
No, never.
Old married couple.
How dare you?
Married couple.
How dare you? I would never say anything bad.
Dark side is.
That's my legacy. Dark side is, and hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Kite Man. Why did you, where did that come from? The whole Kite Man, hell yeah thing. Like what prompted that as a running joke?
Do I have the issue? If you look at the first time Kite Man appears, it's in an Ivan Reis issue of Batman. I think it's issue 6. And I literally it was an issue about my grandmother had just died, and I was writing about death. It was just like a sad issue where Gotham Girl realizes her brother's dead and has to kind of deal with it. And then Batman reveals his parents died, blah, blah, the usual stuff.
Yeah.
But I was like, I need some punching in this issue, because that's boring if it's just 2 people talking the whole time. So I was like, I'm going to use the worst villains just so I can do some fun punching stuff. And I literally Googled worst Batman villains and picked 3 of them. It was, the blimp guy, I can't remember his name, Captain Starfreeze, who's the stupidest one, and Kite Man. And I put him in a 9-panel grid, a very Tomish move. And it was a fun, the camera's following him, and he goes into an apartment, grabs something, and goes out the other way through 9 panels. And in the middle of the panel, the 5th panel, which is the middle one, he says, "Kite Man." He shouts his name out because his name's so stupid. and that was it. That was what it was supposed to be. And when Ivan got the pages, he drew the first 6 panels. I think he got fucking tired. He's like, "Fuck this 9-panel grid, stupid new writer." And he drew like a little, and he drew like a little mini Kite Man splash at the end with no background of Kite Man just kind of sitting there, holding the jewelry he had just stolen. And so it looked really weird on a page for him just to say Kite Man and then to have this sort of big beat at the end where he says nothing. It was in the original script, it was silent. I was like, man, he has to say something. Like, I didn't know what to say. And the clock was ticking. I used to just sing on Twitter. If I saw something really stupid, I'd say hell yeah. So I was like, okay, he says Kite Man, hell yeah. And it was literally just to fill that stupid Ivan Reese half splashy through it.
That's amazing.
And now it's on fucking t-shirts.
Awesome. That is why comics are awesome.
And that's why comics are awesome. Yeah. That became his catchphrase.
Have you did you read the Mark Miller book Starlight?
Yes, I did. Yeah, beautiful art with what's his name?
Gordon Parloff.
Gordon Parloff. Yeah,
Parloff's awesome.
He's amazing.
Did a bunch of the Punishers, right?
Yeah, with Ennis. Yeah, but
he's a fucking boss.
I was thinking about that book when reading the first issue of Strange Adventures a little bit. Not to try and draw any parallels necessarily.
No,
but,
for sure.
But I love that sort of like idea of, you know, what we kind of see or think, you know, in revisionist history, and then sort of seeing maybe the reality isn't as pretty. And obviously there's a ton of things you could relate that to in your life. I'm sure your experiences, that kind of thing, and just general, you know, politics and the world as we know it, especially of late. But with that book in particular, like, was the idea to look at sort of current events and write about that, or was it just, you know, more of the character and then trying to come up with something that made sense with that character, or was it a combination of those sort of things, or was it something completely different?
Well, it's funny, because I don't think of it as an influence, but I think unconsciously it was, because my reaction to that book at the time was I loved it. I think it's a really great book to this day. It's one of the best of the Miller World books. But I always felt, just as a sad, depressed, dark person, that book has such a happy ending. And the whole time I'm waiting for the twist where because if people haven't read it, it's about an old guy who kind of returns to his Flash Gordon world,
right?
And rediscovers his wonderfulness. And I was always waiting for that twist where he would find out that, no, this is all just a fantasy world, go fuck yourself kind of thing. Because it seemed like the story did. But instead it ends up with he conquers the world again and he's happy at the end. It's like such a Hollywood, it's a very Hollywood. And I remember being disappointed by that in that sort of that Watchmen-y way where I was like, no, it's you didn't find the cynicism in this concept, or, you know, like
this is too fucking happy. What the fuck?
How dare you have a happy ending here, Mark Miller? So I do think in some ways that was somewhere in the back of my mind, but sort of unconsciously. Yeah, I mean, that was the whole thing. Books like Starlight, they're all based on Flash Gordon, which is based on Tarzan, which is like these turn of the century books that were really based on, you know, this colonial idea that like a white dude can go to a foreign land and he's kind of boring here. He's boring in America, boring in England. And he can go to a foreign land and he can become a fucking king. And he
Lawrence
can marry
of Arabia,
a princess.
Or Adam Strange.
Arabia.
Yeah, Adam Strange.
Yeah, it's Adam Strange. That's all. That's the template for that guy.
How much John Carter is in Adam Strange?
Adam Strange is a direct ripoff of John Carter. That's a direct ripoff. Oh, I mean, I guess no. John Carter came from, but like, you know, it's Flash Gordon, it's John Carter, it's Buck Rogers, it's
British imperialism.
It's British. It's the second son of a British family going to India, and he's like, I'm boring back here. I go to India, and I'm a fucking king.
Yep.
And so I wanted to write about that. Both, you know, that story. First of all, it's appealing. There's something wonderful about that story. The idea that you go to a foreign land, but it's malicious. You know, it's
it's wonderful and horrible.
It's wonderful and horrible at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to write about that in terms of sort of the fantasy of what that is and the reality of what it is. And then I realized it was at Mitch's house. I was like, well, if we're doing the fantasy and reality, we can do two different artists, one to present the fantasy and one to present the reality. And Mitch and Doc are best friends. And I'd work with Doc on one issue. I was like, if I could combine, because that's what Doc does. Doc does the dream of comics.
Right.
And Mitch draws the reality of the world. He's the best sort of one of the best grounded guys in comics. To me, he's the best.
Doc's art in that is just fucking
It's Doc is stunning.
That is so good.
Both of the guys have upped their game. I think as well. I mean, Mitch always cut, but Doc is now coloring himself for the first time.
Yeah.
So I mean, these are guys that are inking, penciling, inking, and color. I mean, it's all digital, but they're doing. This is their utter vision of what it should be, and they have utter control over their art, and at the top of their game. You can't ask for more than that. So it became that. It's evolved more because I think I imagined Doc to be more of an idealistic version of it, and as he started drawing and sort of responding to what he was drawing, I was realizing that Doc can portray some of the more savage aspects of the story, and so actually his side has evolved from an idealistic version to sort of an idealistic telling of a tragic or a more rounded story than just the ideal version.
So, I hate building the film, analogy to this, but do you feel like comics have become more where the writer is more of the director of the production, or is the editor the director? Does it depend on the series? Does it depend on the creative team? Do you feel like, creative director or screenwriter, or, what, is there a parallel there that you feel, or is it completely different because it's a different medium?
I don't think. I mean, I've never. Look, I've worked on one movie. It's this New Gods movie at the very beginning of it. I'm sure 30 years from now when it's made, or 2 years from now when it's made, I'll have different perspectives on what the job. So I only know from what I read what a director does as opposed to a writer. I haven't experienced it firsthand.
But in comics, it's not like a screenwriter where you're like, okay, here's the this is the script, and now I'm passing it off and I'm walking away. You're still involved with it until it's like, okay, this is going to press, right?
Yeah. To me, I mean, I would say that the writer is, if you had to do analogies, I'd say the writer is the screenwriter and the co-director. The artist is the co-director and the cinematographer. And so you I think that'd be the better way, that you're both the directors of the book in some sort of way. But he's also the clothes designer. It's a lot more jobs.
Sure. But it's not the bullpen anymore.
I mean, but it's like my scripts are super open. I write full script, but they're super open. I'll do something like Superman on the moon holding a flag. You can do whatever you want with that. That's and then a splash.
You're not Alan Moore, who's talking about the worm below the earth that are, have created a community that are, feeding into the scene. But
I'm also not. But when I came into comics, we talk about internships. I came in at the time they were sort of. They were, the Marvel style was still being used. There were still guys like Roger Stern and John Byrne and Walt Simonson, guys who wrote, like literally a 2-page synopsis of what the book would be with no dialogue, no anything. And then so I'm not that either. Even today, like I read a script by Snyder or Williamson, or like their scripts are much more like, hey dude, maybe this could be this thing, or maybe this could be this thing, or try to do something like this, and for the next 3 pages put a fight. And I don't do any of that, so I'm a little more strict than that, where I'll be like there's 6 panels on this page, this is what's in every panel, but my descriptions are very small.
Tony was talking about that with working with Rick Remender, and Rick would say, for the next 3 pages, go nuts.
Yeah. I was in a panel with I'm not sure his name, but Yannick Paquette, the Canadian artist I worked with on Batman 69, and he was talking about working with Grant Morrison on Wonder Woman. He's like 2-page spread, love everlasting. That was the description. That was it.
That is so fucking Grant Morrison, and that is amazing.
With Strange Adventures, any thought to doing like some painted covers? Almost like old book Edgar Rice Burroughs sort of.
All those things. No, I think we're going to stick with. I mean, it's fortunate the virus actually helps with this, but it's very rare that you can have covers of the book these days talk to the interior, because the covers have to be solicited before the story is finished.
Sure.
So usually it's like, holy shit, what's going to happen?
More word balloons on
Batman 73. Yeah, you're like, it's going to be Batman and he's going to fight the Croc. Okay, then that's it. So you don't have time. Like, you look at Watchmen, like every cover is a close-up of the first panel, and the back is the ticking clock. Like, that stuff, it's hard to do that stuff anymore. So we're trying to do something like that, where since Mitch and Doc are doing a cover each, those covers talk to each other,
right? So
that they're kind of the same image reflected back at each other. So I think we're going to stick with that formula.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if that was just
that the first issue's cover spoke to the story so specifically, because you don't see that a lot anymore.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm doing a series now, which I haven't announced yet, because who knows when you're going to announce things anymore. But I've written all 12 issues up front. So I think that's going to be a big...
There are rumors.
Yeah, there are rumors. So we'll see how... That's the first time I've done that, where we're so far ahead we can do some of that sort of Watchmen-y stuff, where we do stuff in the back and the front that sort of talks to the story.
Tell me about Lee Weeks, working with him. I love his work. I love what he did on Batman with you. I just everything he does now, I follow him on Instagram just to see anything that he does. I just want to see him draw more. He's so awesome.
Yeah, Lee's amazing, because he's been around forever, but he never got the credit he deserved.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the guy who followed, almost very closely followed Frank on Daredevil. I mean, you're a big Daredevil guy, so you probably know that. Ink by Al Williamson. Jeez, think about that.
Wow.
And
It
was some of my favorite. That was some of my favorite Daredevil stuff.
The Fall of the Kingpin. That stuff. That's cool stuff, man.
I your depth of comics appreciation. It almost comes back to the base thing, where there's a lot of baseball players now who who Willie Mays is. You know what I mean? And it's like, you have an incredible depth of book appreciation. And do you find that other comic book creators, the new kids up, do they have that same kind of like connection to the generations before them?
The lifers do.
Yeah.
The Bendises and Donny Cates and Gail Simone and the guys, the people who are the people who dip in and out. Some of those, some of those guys don't. Yeah, I always think it should be a requirement. Like, here's 100 comics you have to read before you write your first comic.
Gardner Fox was terrible, but you should love him. God damn it!
You should have read at least one Gardner Fox comic before you start.
That brings up a good question we've posed to a couple of people, and now it came up. What if you had to recommend like 2 or 3 trades or 2 or 3 story arcs of Batman for someone that hasn't read it? What would be the stories of Batman that you would recommend?
The pick question,
and you can pick your own, but
No, don't. I mean, look, this is the dumbest. Everyone has the same answer for this. You got the best Batman stories are Dark Knight Returns and Year One, and it's fucking depressing. That's actually the hardest thing about writing Batman, is that Frank wrote the perfect Batman. You can never.
But I can write the perfect
dude. Adam
Batman?
Strange. Adam Strange. No one's written a good Adam Strange story. I hope I can be the first one. If you can't write better than how Frank Miller wrote Year One and DKR, those are just absolute perfect stories.
But the question isn't necessarily
write a better Rorschach story.
Yeah, no, just like that.
They tried that. It didn't quite work. The question isn't though necessarily what are the best stories. What are the best stories for someone that hasn't read Batman?
Yeah, what would
you know what I mean? Like an introduction to Batman.
Pick 3 Batman stories.
Because I don't know.
It's like, this is Batman, 3 stories.
I think you could read both of those stories as introduction. I mean, Year One obviously is super easy to read. It's his freaking origin story. And Mazzucchelli's art is so clean and it's told in that 6-panel grid. It's super easy.
It's the middle story that everyone gets hung up on because it's year one and DKR. So it's what's the middle story?
I mean, that depends on how like to me, the other masterpiece of Batman is the Englehart Rogers stuff from the late 70s. But that's like, it's a little dated. Like, I'm not sure you're going to come to that fresh as a modern reader and love it. You have to kind of have some context to it. So if you had to pick like one other just standalone, that's tough. I'm looking back at my Batman collection. I mean, Tim Sale, Jeff Lopes stuff probably. I mean, I guess you'd read Hush. I guess I'd go to Hush because it's just
that was Hush. Long Halloween was kind of.
Yeah, I like Tim Sale. I couldn't be more big fan of Tim Sale. I have his on my wall, but I think if I was a new reader, there's no one's art is easier to get why it's good than Jim Lee. That's just everyone knows. You look at Jim Lee art, you're like, oh, that's good art. Like if you've never seen anything before in your life. So I think Hush would probably be the easiest sort of thing to approach. And it's got everybody in it. It's classic and. It's a little murder mystery. So.
I went back and I was reading some late 1960s, early 1970s, and even before Batman. I was just like, I haven't read enough stuff outside of my own like age and like my own generation of stuff. And
slacker.
Yeah, but I was laughing. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but there was a story about Batman where it was like an alternate universe kind of, but they didn't really explain it that way. And in it, though, Bruce Wayne retires and his son takes over as Batman 2.
Oh, this is another one I was thinking of. Yeah, I know these stories. But yeah.
And he literally gives him a costume that has a big Roman numeral.
Yeah, it has a number 2 on it. Yeah.
I'm like, what kind of fucking narcissist passes the mantle to his son, but he has to make sure everyone is aware?
It's like, this is
the second one.
Real one.
Not the original. I'm like, that was interesting. I'm like, what could you do with that? You could play with that a little bit. Like,
you wonder at these. Were they in on the joke? Did they know? Like
I don't know.
You go back and read the Golden Age, and you're like, oh, Wortham was right. They have Batman and Robin are sleeping in the same bed, and he's wearing little. Yes,
you do not.
It's all there. It's all there. No, it is. It is interesting though. Like I love, and I wanted to ask you about that because you play with sort of the meta texture.
One of my favorites.
What are we looking at?
Oh yeah,
Chris?
Neil Adams. Yeah,
oh, gorgeous. Wow. Pick a long shot. Neil Adams, Batman. Yeah, that's it.
But I don't think you could give Neil Adams Batman to a new reader. I think it's written. It's good.
$2 when it came out. It's amazing.
$2 for the whole trade.
It's a slog. Come on,
it couldn't be more beautiful, and it's beautiful. I think a new reader would have again. Comics don't age as well as other material. Some comics do, but they don't.
Some do. You know what I found is that when I go back and read like the DC Treasury stuff, you want to read stuff that ages well. Read Jonah Hex.
Yeah, you're right. Jonah Hex reads good. I agree with you with that. Yeah, Jonah Hex and Conan
Sergeant Rock
read really well.
Sergeant Rock. Yeah, oddly, Robert Kanigher, who was not really known as a great writer, his stuff aged a lot better than a lot of the other writers around him.
I don't know if Westerns age better, but
they're period pieces, so it's like you're not reading them in today's context. You're reading a Jonah Hex book. It's the Wild West. A Western
I don't think
still
that
works.
They were writing Jonah Hex comics for like 12-year-olds either.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like a lot of these guys were guys trying to make a living, but they were trying to make a living by selling comics to children. So they were purposely dumbing down their material, and in dumbing that down, I think they're like carried about. I know, but then again, there's always I was reading recently the Superman Lois Lane issues. Like I got them right here.
Is he awesome?
I could not tell you how entertaining this comic was. It was the most sexist thing I've ever written in my life. But every page, I was like, Wonder Woman and Lois Lane are having a karate fight to determine who will win Superman's love. I want to see how this turns out.
It's amazing. Have you read Fraction's Jimmy Olsen series?
I have. Yeah,
it's so good.
It's so fun.
It's so Fraction being Fraction, and I love that they finally have him on a book that is something that is his fucking personality.
I was just reading reading it today, and I was like, it feels almost like a glass of lemonade or something. It just feels.
It's amazing. It's just so good. It is so good.
I agree with you. I highly endorse that book.
Speaking of sexist.
Speaking of sexism,
I was.
What I do now?
No. I've been watching like 70s heist movies, actually like 50s, 60s, and 70s heist movies. But
I'm into it. I just watched Pelham 1, 2, 3 with my.
That's what I just watched.
Just watched. So good, the sneeze.
Oh my god! And the look that he gives at the last scene, just like they kind of. But it's like the beginning of that. You know, he's like walking up those the group of guys from Japan. He's like, and he's just pissed off.
Total racist.
Oh my god, it's so racist.
It's terrible. It's just you're like, this is acceptable at one point.
It's just so terrible. It's amazing to go back to some of that stuff and watch it and just like be, oh god, how did we ever think this was okay? I mean, how did we ever?
We're watching all 70s and TV shows now. Besides like Great British Baking Show, which is we watch that every lunchtime. Great British Baking Show. It's our oasis of the day.
I watched that show. I'm into it. We'll talk to you about some tarts.
Start the day with Murder, She Wrote and Charlie's Angels. That's our 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then we start our work day. And then we watch Magnum P.I.
Dude, you
are the oldest couple ever.
Well, that's all that's on in Milwaukee, though, right? Like that's just broadcast on Milwaukee.
Like seriously, I walk downstairs, I make my tea, I have Earl Grey tea. We're just watching Murder, She Wrote, and then we watch Charlie's Angels, and then
you should just end it.
To our offices, we work. We come back at lunchtime. I make lunch. We watch the Great British Baking Show. We watch that, and then in the afternoon, we come back. We watch Magnum P.I.
I will say this about the Great British Baking Show is that I do appreciate the fact that because it's British, it doesn't have the same cutthroat feeling of the American baking shows. They're all very nice.
Of love.
Yeah. But more often than not, there's at least one contestant that I can't fucking understand. I know they're speaking English, but
they're from Scotland.
They have closed captioning.
They're from Scotland.
Yeah.
Look at that, pissing off all the Scottish listeners. Jeez.
I love Scotland. It's my favorite country. I would, if I could.
Oh, now you piss off all the American listeners. Jeez, fuck you, man. I fought for this country, motherfucker.
If I could retire and fuck off all of you, if I retire and open, I would.
Jesus. In a fucking bog somewhere in Scotland.
There's a distillery there.
How is Scotland your favorite? What is wrong with you?
There's a distillery.
There's distilleries everywhere.
And a curling club.
Jesus.
Oh, I forgot about the curling.
I'm starting to hope you get coronavirus at this point. I'm starting to
flashback. I didn't say that. That was something.
I'm a very good curler, Tom.
All right, it's midnight. I have to go to sleep soon. Any last questions?
All right, yeah. I was supposed to cut this off 7 minutes ago.
Oh, did mommy tell you had to
Tom,
go home?
I'm just,
go to bed?
Just out there. Anytime come back and talk with us, you are more than welcome.
That cannot. I'm not. I got sentimental at the beginning. I get sentimental at the end. Honestly, guys, I cannot thank you enough for the hard work you put into it. It in every way changed my life. The effort you guys put into this show and the passion you found into comics, and it helped me renew my passion. I'm eternally grateful. Thank you.
Don't get weepy on.
I'm gonna get weepy. If Tom was here, I would cry.
How about next time we'll get Tom back on and you can come back and be a return guest.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Tom's too smart for me. It's too funny. I'll feel bad.
He slowed down a bit in his old age. Kids are taking it out of him.
Yeah, he's really slowing down. The kids have fucking worn it out of him.
Yeah. All right, then that's good. All right, as long as I get slow Tom, I'm good.
He is a shell. He's a shell of his former self.
I just want to say,
if you ever want an awkward moment, be in the CIA in your fucking room and you burst into laughter and someone's like, "What are you laughing at, man?" "Oh, dude, you should have fucking heard what Tom said about the goddamn Justice Society." I'm like, oh my God, get me out of this fucking place.
Well, we could not have a better legacy, honestly, for this silly fucking podcast than the fact if we had anything to do with your becoming a comic book writer. And I have to honestly say that you are one of my favorite comic book writers working today, honestly.
Great. Now I'm going to cry. No, I got to be more manly. Chris set the bar when he said he watches Murder, She Wrote when he woke up. So, I got to live up to that level.
Yeah. So, Angela Lansbury sets a fucking bar that I expect Tom King to.
Okay, here comes the outro. And it's coming. Here we go. Yeah, we're just starting that outro right now. It's been nice. All right, Tom King, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you all. Don't forget to subscribe to this wonderful podcast, please.
In the meantime,
in between time,
we'll be everywhere in and around
comics.
Yeah, baby. That's right, we will.
Comics.
Dark Side is